bit expansion into the paver area here. So with that being said, the cross slopes are really the key, the drainage infrastructure, all these items are really the key to kind of set this up for the future, so that in the event that if we ever need something like this and we can monitor the intersection, that we can relatively easily produce this product. I'm going to briefly talk about the stormwater and utilities here. So this is an overall utility plan. As Dan mentioned, the pump station 27 is at the south of the page here. That's just about complete. And we're taking the gravity sewer line. It's a 15-inch line north, about a few hundred feet up to the intersection of Cross Street, which is, for perspective, is just going to be north of where the grandstand building is currently right now. A 12-inch sewer main is going to be proposed beyond that, and a 12-inch sewer main is going to be proposed in Cross Street. An 8-inch sewer main is going to be proposed in Market Street to serve all these lots via gravity, because we've made the initial investment for the pump station at earlier stages. This is an existing 6-inch force main that comes down from pump station 26, which is the pump station just south of the Innovation District. We're going to be collecting that in the gravity sewer line and feeding it to pump station 27, which eventually goes out the Higas Parkway. This is all in line with the sewer master plan. We've been working with the Scarborough Sanitary District quite a bit on this. And this is, our intention is to keep, as the subdivision grows, we keep chewing back that sewer line, if you will, to make sure that everything is served and there's no delayed production in any of that. We're going to continue the 16-inch water main north on Downs Road as well. It currently ends just about where the pump station building is. We're going to continue that all the way up, and 8-inch water mains in Cross Street and Market Street as well. There's overhead power that exists just south of the pump station driveway currently today. We're going to be, and then there's actually a brace pole on the other side of the pump station driveway. So we're replacing the brace pole with a much larger pole, and then adding one more just about 15 feet north of it before we drop underground for this entire subdivision. So we have to add another pole from based on just essentially real estate on the pole for getting the risers up and down it. I know there was a comment in the staff memo on that, and we're committed to going underground. It's just a matter of working with CMP on actually getting all the different risers, because we're going 3-phase power underground, and getting that real estate on the pole. So we're adding another pole just to be able to drop it down into the subsurface structures. This is an overall grading plan that shows the gravel wetland that Dan mentioned. I do want to mention this gravel wetland is fully approved by the DEP. We've received that permit back in 2020. We're proposing the stormwater chloride mitigation system that we've been doing all along on the downs, where it directs snow melt water directly into the stream and flushes it, as in directly into Willowdale Brook, and flushes it during the winter parts of the years. And then the gravel wetland acts as your water quality treatment during the summer months. It's been successful to date in this project, and we're proposing it again here. Everything in this initial subdivision is stormwater runoff drains to this gravel wetland here. A little portion of lot 2 up in the left-hand corner here will go to an isolated grass under drain soil filter. We left that off intentionally off this application because we're not proposing any lot disturbance as part of this, and that'll be come back in front of the board for when that site plan moves forward. It just takes none of the road, just a little bit of the lots up here. This gravel wetland is also oversized to take additional area north and east of this development, and we've sized the drainage infrastructure as well to accommodate that future flow. We provided scorecards as well in our application. I think Dan's going to wrap it up here.
Thanks, Drew. And actually, we didn't mention it, but obviously 3i Home is on the agenda this evening. And they factored into the approach in terms of the to the raised intersection, thinking through ease of crossing, especially for their planned residents. And I know the Central Square is a key destination for that project. So we didn't bring that up as part of the earlier comments. But in terms of next steps, essentially we're going to spend much of the remainder of March and April working with staff and peer review. We've set up some specific meetings with the peer reviewers so that they understand the background behind the design approach to town center, because it's fairly intricate. and have opportunities to kind of work through solutions and review before we come back to the board. And we'll update the plans, and we're anticipating, allowing for some additional weeks, so we kind of a late April preliminary review versus an early April to enable that collaboration to occur. You'll also be starting to get applications for kind of sketch plans similar to 3i Home for other sites over the course of April, May, June within town center, because we want those to track kind of right behind subdivision review and also help kind of give the board context for a lot layouts and overall kind of town center development and design approach. So that will be occurring as we develop plans, and we anticipate lot 4 would be before you in early April, that lot essentially across from 3i Home, and then likely later in April, early May would be the mixed use building. So expect that to be coming before you, and you'll get more color graphics and more interesting things to look at. Brian will assure you of that. And all of this is kind of queuing up towards, hopefully a late May, early June approval, so that we can start construction, this summer construction season. It's critical to kind of get the town center underway. And also for 3i Home in particular, they have funding requirements that they need to apply for through Maine Housing that has like an annual opportunity. So we're working hard with them on schedule and that's why they're the first sketch plan for you to see, so that they can kind of move through the process, address board concerns and comments and staff, and be in position to apply to Maine Housing later this season. So that's really what we see kind of as next steps. And this evening, we're eager to hear from the board on this initial preliminary, recognizing we're going to be coming back to you, with a tuned up preliminary submission in late April. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dan. This is an item that is available for public comment. Is there any member of the public in the room who would care to make a comment? Is there anybody online? No one online? No one dashing up to the front from the room? Public comment is over. I will turn this over to the board. Now is the chance to make sure that we're really clear on what this is going to look like, because it sounds as though what we're starting off is the beginning of a wave of sketch plans and applications coming in, and it's going to be heavily dependent upon how we work through this and move on to the actual construction requests. Rick, you want to start?
Sure. Dan, you mentioned lot 2, and I didn't hear what your proposed use is going to be. Is that mixed use, or is it all commercial, or what? For lot 2.
Yeah, lot 2, we anticipate, if you look up on the screen, Rick, we anticipate where you see it says lot 2, that end of lot 2 to be mixed use. So,
Mixed use.
yep. And then we anticipate maybe more commercial to the left. Lot 2 is likely to end up being, potentially 3 lots. If you can picture those arrows being lot
Okay,
lines.
so you're thinking maybe that's going to get divided,
Yep.
Okay.
And we're anticipating maybe it could be added on to the north.
but it's all mixed use. It's not all residential.
Correct. We're-
Okay, thank you. Let's see. While you're doing this, will there be access to Route 1 from the Payne Road throughout the construction process? Just to make sure that the town residents can get from the Payne Road to Route 1 or vice versa if they needed to.
Yeah, we're working through where the alignment would go. That's something that we'd cover before final approval to
Okay,
provide.
so you'll have that all baked into your
Yeah,
submission.
That's really more of a construction sequencing plan
Yeah.
that we intend to provide for. Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. I was noticing on the plans that the pump station 27 is under construction and it was approved in February 2nd of 2022. And I don't find in my records where we even had that on our agenda. Can you shed a little bit of light on how this pump station, and I assume there's a building on there?
There is, yep.
Because I don't recall seeing any sort of plans or anything for that pump station.
It was.
I know we talked about it as
Yeah.
part of what you needed to deal with the waste, but I don't recall ever seeing anything for that particular lot.
Well, the lot wasn't created. So right now it's on overall Crossroads land. Now we're creating the lot around it, but it was reviewed and approved as part of one of the residential phases that it serves. So, because it serves.
Okay, so it must have been way before February 2nd then.
It was probably the fall of 21 where the subdivision was reviewed to approve it.
I didn't look that far into
Is
my,
that right?
we probably need to update the plans then to historically recognize that it was approved back in 2021, not 2022.
And just to clarify, the February 2022 approval is from the Scarborough Sanitary District. That was essentially,
Oh,
Or
okay.
what that
That's
was
when the
referencing.
sanitary district said you had the
Correct.
capacity, or they could manage the.
yeah,
capacity.
and they approved our design for the pump station.
Okay,
so
but
that's what
still,
that is.
I don't recall any sort of plans before us on lot 2, unless my colleagues, I don't know, but I'd kind of like to see what that's gonna look like when it's fully built out. I mean, you gotta have some lighting there, you must have a building, you got colors, what have you.
Yeah, and
Right. So will that be included in the next submission?
it would be more of an as-built plan.
It sounds like it has to be.
Yeah,
Okay, all right. I just wanted to bring that up. And I
Yeah.
think, staff and our peer reviewer has laid out a number of things to, go back to the.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go over those, and I'm certainly not going to ask questions about the raised intersection there, although I think that's got some cleverness to it. And I think I can get along with this kind of division of this area. I think you've put some thought into it. I want to make sure too that when you cross the stream with Market Street, you are now underground at that point all the way through on Market Street, correct, with your utilities?
yes. Market Street is currently approved and under construction with overhead only on the highest end to
Right,
the
and then once you cross the
intersections.
stream, it
And
goes
then
under.
we actually don't go any further. So power comes from the town center side.
Okay, so
to
power is
serve.
gonna come down from town center for lot 1.
Yeah, lot 1 and 2, if you look on the screen, lot 1 and 2 are served from the Downs Road and then within Market Street, all underground. It's not coming from Higas Parkway to serve this area of the
Okay.
project.
Got it, got it.
Yep.
No, you brought me along pretty good here. It seems to make some sense. The hammer or I guess that could be called a hammerhead on Cross Street, I believe it is. Is there any insight on where that might end up going? Cross Street, once it gets beyond lot 4 or 3?
I was going to go to the network plan. So this can help. So again, orientation's different, but Cross Street is the right side of that U in yellow.
Yep.
We're showing Cross Street in yellow, in this subdivision plan. And then we anticipate it's going to continue and connect to what likely would be Front Runner extension. So Front Runner today goes up from Downs Road through the residential phase. And we anticipate it will be extended to connect with Cross Street.
Maybe you can superimpose that in the next submission, just so that we start to see the grid layout
Sure.
of what the downtown district looks like. That would
Yeah.
be helpful. Thanks. I think at this point, Madam Chair, I'm not going to get into the traffic or anything. I have more esteemed colleagues that deal with that every day. So I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I will move to the esteemed colleague who understands traffic, Jen.
Someday, Rick, I'm just gonna come with all the lighting questions.
Okay.
Okay. I guess my first question is, I know that in some instances in other parts of the Downs, you have by choice or by force, put in roadway infrastructure first and come back second with lot build out, and in some other cases, lot build out, and then finishing with the roadways and sidewalks and things like that. For this raised intersection, what's the thought here? And I understand that we're early on in the process, and you're still, as discussed, working on ironing out the uses at that corner and probably tenants and things like that. But I'm just curious about what the interim situation here would be like for a raised intersection. I can generally picture it fully built out, so with people using it, with people driving through it, with the sidewalk dining adjacent to it. But in the event that any of those lag, I'm just curious what your vision is for phasing here at kind of a high level in terms of construction.
Sure. If things go the way, according to plan, there wouldn't be a significant lag. So if up on this graphic, there's some arrows. So we're under design right now on this mixed use building, which is at the corner. And I can bring up the pretty picture in a minute, but it's the one that Brian showed, the corner on the right with outdoor dining. So we're working on design pricing right now, conceptual design, and hope to be before the board to show you that, through site plan this spring, and hope to start construction on that later this year. So we anticipate at the same time, or not long after Market Street Downs Road, that intersection there's people using it. We're also working on concepts for the central square, and that may lag a little bit behind the mixed use building. And again, we're doing the same exercise on pricing, but we think that's going to be activated, similar in terms of timing. Also, we're working on this residential site we're calling Lot 4, and anticipate, even if that central square building is not complete, there's a lot of pedestrians coming out through the central square using that crosswalk. So we don't think we're going to have like a raised intersection there with surrounded by construction, not have active people and active uses, at least for very long. I think the least clear, as Brian indicated, is the building and sites north of Market Street, because we first want to kind of tackle the one to the south. So that may lag some. We want to be able to kind of lease up that first building, get some activity. But at least, two legs of this intersection are going to be activated, if you will, around the time that we're completing the intersection.
So the thought is to, when you build out the infrastructure portion of the intersection, to build it raised, not to do like
Correct. Yeah.
a base pavement with mini ramps or something like that until the point at which you fully raise the rest of it.
No, the intention would be to build it raised from the get-go.
Okay. Other questions about capacity? I know there were some comments. I really thought a lot of the points raised by the traffic peer reviewer, and this one raised a lot of really good points, I thought, and one in particular about the capacity of this intersection. And Drew, you touched on it a little bit in your presentation, but I'm wondering, first of all, if you talked about the option down the road for potential widening here of multiple lane approaches, at that point, is there anything on any situation that you can envision whereby this intersection would require signalization or meet signal warrants? Or would you do a multi-lane approach with an always stop kind of thing?
So, and kind of a tough
And
question.
I know you don't know any of those answers.
Yeah, and
sorry.
Erica is online too, that can help me out, but I'll kind of walk you through. So like I mentioned, we didn't provide a full traffic analysis, which can be provided in the next one. What our thought process behind that, and what we've worked with the peer reviewer on developing, is full build out, trip generation, trip distribution through this intersection that we think is the absolute max this intersection will ever see. A lot of assumptions went into that, but we started there and looked at a single lane, always stop intersection. And then we kind of tweaked it and said, okay, let's look at some of the queuing. We don't necessarily care too much about the level of service, but we looked at the queuing. We said, we want to make sure this is safe. We don't want to back up into other intersections, and worked from there into, all right, if we ever see these volumes, which are projected beyond 15 plus years, we have the opportunity to add a left and right turn or a left and through if you're coming on Downs Road. So with it being an always stop, we would anticipate that we'd never see more than just a left and right out of Market Street, and leave it as an always stop in that scenario. If traffic patterns change, uses change in the future, and we needed to add a left turn onto, let's say, the Downs Road North approach, we would get rid of the always stop. It would be just it would be just a Market Street stop, and that would be free flowing. So kind of going back, we don't anticipate ever seeing that we're going to meet signal warrant analysis. That's still in review, and we're still kind of developing and fine tuning that. But we're not anticipating that, which is why we've started here.
I'm always looking out for the versions of us, 20 years from now, 40 years from now, whatever it is. And I'm sure that 20 years ago or 40 years ago, people sitting in these seats were saying similar things about a lot of other intersections that we have in town. We can't predict the future. But this just strikes me as being limited in terms of capacity, and without getting into it, I'll look forward to more information on that as you come forward with future submissions. Another question that I have, it's clear that you are intending to focus on pedestrian priority at this intersection, but it feels a little bit to me isolated. And so I'm curious if you have looked at repeating any of the same treatment at adjacent intersections, particularly the one at Cross Street and road to be named to the north. I don't know that we saw that one. And or either of the proposed mid-block crossings on Market Street or further down on the Downs Road. And I mention that because I think that otherwise the geometry here continues to be encouraging of vehicular through traffic and higher than desired speeds. And so rather than coming out of the gates here with paint and signs and RFBs, which are sort of our classic mitigation tools, after the fact, like when we have issues, because this is essentially a blank slate, it feels like there's the opportunity here to maybe try to design out some of those problems down the road. And so I'm wondering if you've looked at raised crossings in any of those locations and or discussed them with town staff. If you've discussed them and they're non-starters, then I'm the one that's behind here. But I think that would be another way to sort of reinforce to people that are living and working on the Downs, people that are visiting the Downs, we mean it. We mean it that pedestrian traffic here is a priority. We're encouraging you to walk between lot 3 and lot 2 and where you live, closer down to Route 1. And we're doing that not just at this one intersection, but at a lot of other intersections. And I think that plays into, you are doing that in other ways through the trail networks and things like that. But I think with the roadway infrastructure, I'm just curious if there's the opportunity to sort of repeat any of that in a way to really reinforce that kind of priority. That's my big comment on that one. As for if you do stick with this intersection alignment, one of the things that jumped out at me immediately is that you're proposing not only the raised intersection, but bollards at the head of Market Street. And the detail that you included for bollards, I think I only saw one. If there's a different one, my apologies. But I think that this is a location that should receive really, really robust bollards, given that geometry. Decorative if you want, but crash rated at a minimum, and in an effort to protect the activity that you're hoping to attract on the backside of those. What else? There were some, maybe they're similar. I'm curious about the heavy duty pavers, and I think that came up in some of the staff or peer review comments as well. And so I'm not sure if you have additional information on those. I'm curious what the maintenance would be like and whether or not we have any, do we have any of these elsewhere in town? Does anybody know? My towns get mixed up, so I don't think we do. But sometimes there's a little learning curve there on maintenance. So I'm just curious, salt, sand, heaving, plowing, what the vision there is. And the intersection plan that you have, C206, that shows long detectable warning panels here, which would be required for ADA compliance at a raised intersection like this. It looks like you're proposing, what are you proposing on either side of those? It looks like
They're seat
planters?
walls.
Seat walls, okay. And so the thought there is what, that those would coincide with curb, as you introduce curb reveal?
Yeah, and actually, I probably could describe this in the presentation, but the seat walls are really more visual, but they're also to try to provide a safe pedestrian crossing so that people aren't crossing either at the ramp or further up. We want to kind of force them and herd them to these crosswalks. The seat walls are at their location. The radii, which is the flush granite curb that goes around the corners there, are designed for kind of the everyday traffic, but we've provided heavy duty pavers beyond that, and the seat walls are positioned beyond that so that the larger vehicles can still make the turn, but we're trying to condense the nature of the intersection so that the crossing seems smaller. So it's almost a guide, if you will.
Mhm. Okay. Is there any, will there be any landscaping at this intersection?
Yeah.
Looks like a lot of hardscaping.
Yep, I think between the tree wells on either side and the landscaped areas that would ultimately, possibly be in the temporary on this side, but in the permanent setting over here, as well as on the opposite and kind of the bookend side of the intersection, are going to have some plantings, and we'll make sure those are more clear in the application moving forward too for you.
Okay. I think that's it. I have some other comments, but I'll wait for their more detailed in nature, so I'll hold those for next time. In particular, I continue to have concerns about the long-term capacity of this intersection, well beyond, what we're looking at here. And just want to make sure that we are taking advantage, we collectively are taking advantage of the new design, the new construction here versus building ourselves things that will become maintenance or operational challenges later on. But thank you for your in-depth presentation. Also a second for always helpful to see the larger roadway network here. And I know that was a staff comment and Rick had the same comment. I just, the risk of being redundant, I think it's really important and it's really helpful for us particularly when you're talking about, the fact that, that you believe that a lot of the vehicular traffic will bypass this intersection. It's hard for me to picture that based on what was submitted, but I know that you have some more things coming, so be looking out for those. But thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Roger.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. When I first saw this intersection and the raised, the 4-inch raised section, I thought it was pretty creative. So while you have this screen up right there, the curved pavers, are they going to blend in with the pavers that create the 4-inch rise, or are they going to be a little bit higher?
The
In
pavers
other
will
words, are
also,
they going to be more defined, or are they going to blend in with the contour of the 4-inch raised pavers leading up to the platform, more or less?
the intention is that I think the same material paver color scheme would be throughout this intersection there, as well as it's going to follow a certain grade based on how the raised intersection is graded out, but it's going to be all uniform.
So that will not be raised at all? The curved section?
Yes, it will be that. So if you think of it, when you're usually on a sidewalk, you're a little bit above the road. We're just bringing
Yes,
we're bringing the road up to that level, so that all those pavers you see will all be at the same grade with, appropriate slopes.
Okay, so for instance, if somebody were in a wheelchair or something, they would have no difficulty negotiating from the curved pavers onto the pavers that lead up to the platform. And I'm referring to the platform as a square center.
Correct. That's all this relatively the same grade. Yep.
Okay. Okay. I still think it's pretty creative. It looks pretty good. One of the things I read in the materials was I think at the previous meeting, there was some discussion of roundabouts. And I just wanted to add this comment. I happen to be in an area. I'm down in Florida by Sarasota right now, and I happen to be in a section which was all recently developed. It looked very much like what you guys are trying to do here. And their main street going through, they had a series of 3 roundabouts with mixed use buildings on either side. And when I first went through it, I thought, well, that's kind of a neat idea. But then the more I thought about it, I mean, the traffic going around the roundabouts almost overrides a pedestrian. I mean, if you're a pedestrian trying to get around those roundabouts, it can be challenging, So I just wanted to add my 2 cents on that. If you wouldn't mind, Dan, going to your street network, that screen.
Sure.
Okay. One of the things I've been thinking is the residents who live down by Route 1 in the Mill Commons area, the first phase.
Yeah.
It seems to me if they want to head out towards the turnpike, actually, I wouldn't say the Mills Common, but more the town residential north area. That's the one that's being developed right now, I believe, right?
Yeah, that's on the screen upper right.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, it seems to me when those people who live there want to get out towards the turnpike, they're going to go along the Downs Road and they're going to go to that intersection and then they're going to take Market Street. And unlike further north, where I see you have another road, kind of sketched in there, exactly, where people from the Innovation District, if they wanted to head south, they could actually come down the Downs Road, and take that one of those side streets and get on the Market right onto the Parkway.
Mhm.
So I can see a potential problem with the residents up there in the town center north. They're going to be going through that intersection. I don't see any other way. You don't have any other avenue for them to bypass that intersection other than front runner
Mhm.
as a possibility, and going all the way over and then connecting with that, one of those streets to the north of Market.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
And that's probably what they will do, but other than that, they're basically gonna be stuck using that intersection.
Yeah, and
Any
and
comment?
actually, yep. I mean, Drew mentioned it. We've been working on the traffic projections and the analysis. And though there are a number of housing units, from a numbers standpoint, that's the least traffic generation of the whole project, that residential end. So we can provide the peer reviewer and the board more information on that, but out of the movements, that wasn't a particularly heavy movement. If you compare it with some of the other movements, especially more commercial movements. But we'll get that for you, Roger, to look at.
See, I don't see most residents who live in town, say east of Route 1, if they want to get to exit 42 or like that, I don't really see them driving through the downs.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't think I would just go down Route 1 and get on the Parkway. And I don't see them doing it, but I can see, especially as you build up more, that you extend that front runner. And again, front runner, if you extend it, I can see the people bypassing that intersection completely, which would be probably a good thing. And I hate to bring this up, but I just kind of curious, when you were developing the town center, did you give any thought to moving that town center green area up further east, maybe a block, and just allow the Downs Road to continue to be a main road going through there? Do you know what
I'll look at Brian. I mean, Brian can elaborate, but we really wanted the central square
Okay,
to be right in the heart and to be an amenity that commercial, a restaurant, a retail wants to be across from. And it's going to be more than a green, and we'll bring a site plan before the board, later this spring, but it's going to have likely a brewery and other amenity space, lawn area. It's going to be quasi-commercial and really be the gathering place. So our design intent was to put it right in the heart, not kind of slide it out of the way. We want it to be that kind of magnet for the project. And a little bit of congestion is frankly a sign of a very successful city. I mean, so we're not trying to be free flowing at this intersection. We're trying to be kind of balanced and controlled. But level of service isn't really the goal, for moving cars through the intersection.
okay. What about trucks? If you're going to have mixed use with retail and restaurants and breweries
Sure.
or whatever, you're going to have trucks going through that same area.
We are, and Drew mentioned he has kind of showed how larger vehicles can make the turn, but the intention is that particularly the roads you see kind of lower left from the intersection are intended to be for more of the deliveries. And those roads are kind of on the back of house side of the buildings that are going to be fronting Downs Road. So you'd expect most deliveries would occur using those roads. But if a truck, it does go through these intersections or this intersection, I think the turning radius is designed to accommodate that fire truck, to accommodate trucks. But the intention is to, direct them on a regular basis to the other roadways.
Okay. My last question is on the intersection, the raised intersection. Is there anything like that anywhere else around here, around the greater Portland area or southern Maine? Because I don't recall ever seeing one. I think it's a good idea, but I don't recall seeing one.
I was actually in Burlington this weekend. And Burlington, Vermont, sorry.
Oh.
That's not in the immediate vicinity, but one of a very successful street called Church Street, which people probably know about in Burlington, is a walking mall It's
Yeah.
an old street. They converted the whole street to a pedestrian mall.
Yeah.
But there are a number of cross streets, and those cross streets all come up to grade, and it's not that obvious, because as you're driving, 4 inches isn't very much, 6 inches
Yeah.
isn't very much. And those streets cross the pedestrian mall. So that's an example that just comes to mind because I was there yesterday. But we'll give you some other examples. I know there's one in Linfield, Mass. There's some others that we can point you and the board to kind of give you a better sense, Roger, of real life examples.
Yeah, okay, well, that's good. I think Jen's suggestion on having raised intersections at those other streets, Cross Street and the other similar one, may be worth considering because they would create some more, traffic calming features. But I like the idea. I think it's pretty creative, and hopefully it will work out well. I don't have any other further questions right now, Rachel. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Jim?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Following up on just looking at the main intersection real quick, when Jen was talking about bollards earlier. Maybe look at the review the standards for ATFP, that's anti-terrorism and force protection, for the construction of these bollards, because those tend to be more, better designed to withstand impact of vehicles and things like that. It's a much more prevalent issue in today's world, unfortunately, but we definitely want to see bollard protection for pedestrians, especially at that intersection, and if that's going to be an open area in there.
Mhm.
Looking more towards Roger's question, can you, because I'm thinking of Commercial Street downtown, where downtown Portland, where delivery trucks are parked in sort of the center median for
Yeah.
deliveries and so on. Can you include in your plan to provide road signage to really physically, as best as possible, direct these delivery trucks to take alternate routes rather than go through the downtown? That tends to be a little bit more efficient, especially. I'm just envisioning, cars parked on either side, a lot of pedestrians going around all over the place. The turning radiuses may certainly be there for these large trucks to go across, but can't account for someone's poor taste in their parking. So having more directed signage for delivery vehicles to take alternate routes around and just avoiding that T intersection, or even adding another separate road that goes around the entire area just for delivery vehicles, just to avoid that, is something that I would like to see at least addressed or considered or commented on. Obviously not tonight, but for the next presentation. Can we go back to the conceptual renders of the light commercial feature piece? Of the T intersection?
This one?
Yes, thank you. So do you, and this may be a little bit far ahead, but is the plan for businesses at this intersection to really be sort of the anchor businesses for this location? Are they gonna be whatever businesses that go in there? Is it the intent for them to sort of help carry the image of this downtown vibe and feel for this intersection?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and
Yeah.
I guess, do you have, not to dig deep into this, but do you have anticipations of what some of those businesses might be, or interested parties already, or?
We have a lot of interested parties that have actually been waiting on the town center. There's a laundry list, actually. And so right now we're working on, obviously, building design and some initial pricing. So then we can start to work on, okay, does this lease rate work? And does this space work? So we have a variety of restaurants that are interested in being within the project. Some are interested in this location. Some are actually interested in the first lot off of Higas Parkway, near Allagash. We have some retail, we have some service that want to be in town center. So we've been designing the first mixed use building and actually this amenity building with those end users in mind. And we're starting to kind of get reactions to our layout. We see this amenity building being really kind of a mix, hopefully you can maybe make it out. It says brew pub, a brewery restaurant on the right. Would be an ideal spot for that activity. You see that covered pavilion, which is really kind of a place for a variety of things to happen. You can just hang out. There could be activities. There could be, yoga in the park kind of thing that's happening under that covered pavilion. And then the area on the left is potentially kind of amenity space for the whole project. And then what this plan doesn't show very well is the surrounding kind of outdoor space that this is really kind of zoomed in on the intersection. So you get a good sense of that building, which we want to anchor the intersection, but around it is going to have different outdoor amenities that would be for the project, also be for the entire community. So we're early. We're in the sausage making, as Brian would say, stage. But we're getting close to kind of being able to bring it forward to the town.
Great, thank you, Dan. With regard to future growth in this area, and mimicking my colleagues' comments about wanting this centerpiece intersection to really try to be as, I hate using the phrase, but future-proof, or just planning for any sort of consideration in the future with regard to increase in traffic, population growth in the space. And I appreciate having the foresight to sort of design this intersection with the thought in mind that it could be expanded in the future. And I'd like to see that kind of forward thinking, especially on something like this, which, the next 40, 50, 60 years, people will still be using this area.
Mhm.
Have you given any consideration? I know we talked about it briefly at the previous, at the sketch plan phase of this, but a multi-story parking facility rather than having the sort of open parking lots. Has there been a consideration of having one close to this downtown area here? Again, thinking for the future, why not have something like that designed now, knowing that, the geotech and the survey and the ground can hold such a structure, or how large that could be in the future, and maybe some, an architectural feature of that for people being on the roof to sort of get an aerial view of
Yeah.
the entire downs. I'm just seeing, as this is becoming more popular, you're going to, with Costco and Allagash and other folks that have really expressed interest in here, and also myself as well, wanting to go here as well. It's just going to be more and more popular as a destination. So have you considered a multi-story parking structure? And is that something that we could see as part of like a massing diagram on this? And where would it be located?
We've actually spent a lot of time talking about it. But we also have a lot of, right now, we have an availability of land, and we have the kind of the need to make the numbers work for the initial phases of town center. So our current direction is to be very deliberate about kind of identifying a location where it's possible to kind of go vertical with parking. And it could be that parking starts as surface, kind of as a lot of older downtowns have kind of the public lot, whereas it's like the overflow parking that's off street. We're picturing something like that, where initially it could be surface parking, but it's sized, to your point, it's sized to kind of go vertical. It's in the right location within the town center for kind of ease of access, close to retail, but not in a key location.
Right.
It shouldn't be. And also from a kind of a geotechnical and construction standpoint. So we know we can, if the numbers work and there's the warrant for it, the demand for it, we could kind of execute on that. So that's been a lot of our conversation as we laid out kind of town center, thinking about, okay, this is our short-term plan, and this is kind of our long-term plan in terms of surface parking.
Could we see that, as far as, even if it's just an area where you've considered that this would be where a multi-story parking structure would go, that's near to this area? Because if you're, I'm thinking, folks going here during lunch hour or something like that for yoga, they want to go in and out real fast. They want to be in there. They have a very limited amount of time and window. So I'd like to see what your thoughts would be on where it would go in there to help facilitate, that person coming from another part of town, or South Portland or Portland, going to an event here, meeting someone for lunch, being able to go park there, get out without having to worry about, parking a quarter mile away or a 10th mile away, somewhere else along that street, thinking, this is going to be very busy, very popular, and
hope
very
so.
successful.
We'll talk as a team and we'll generate some concepts for you to
Great.
understand what we're thinking.
I appreciate that. Thank you. One comment I had on the lighting, I saw that 3000 K color temperature for the LED fixtures based on the photometric plan. That's great. As just my thing, just continue to review, and as you see any kind of exterior light fixtures, have them specified at 3000 K. I believe that is part of the town standard for their ordinance, but 3000 K for building mounted fixtures and for pole mounted fixtures we want to see in there. Because it's very obvious when you're driving through and you have different color temperatures on your light fixtures, and it just doesn't quite look right.
Taking notes, Drew.
Let's see, the only other question I have, the massing diagram for multi-levels parking structure I'd like to see. My last one, because my colleague Noah Perla is absent this evening, but speaking for him, and granted, Kevin, that it was a topic when we approved the right of way for the intersection on Route 1. You've confirmed that the grass, seed, and plantings, they all conform to state of Maine DEP list, that we don't have any species on the plans now that the DEP has flagged as invasive or do not plant. Recall that conversation.
That's been our
we had.
intention. We'll go through it again before the next submission.
Great. Yeah, because I know he'll certainly be here for this next one, and we certainly want to see that addressed. And understanding that some of these may have already been planted already in earlier stages. If so, then that it is what it is at this point, but going forward, we certainly want to make sure that nothing's being planted that is on that do not plant list by the DEP. Sorry, my last question, Madam Chair. For Brian from Cube 3, if we can go to the drawing that shows the multi-level housing and its proximity to the downtown spot. It was the multi-unit housing. One of the earlier slides, I believe.
Is it just plan view?
Yeah, it's just a plan view.
Okay.
I think it's one of these. My question is,
This one?
yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. Again, thinking about downtown Portland and how a lot of the older buildings there have been converted into residential, with their existing restaurants and bars and a lot of music, a live music scene and activity there. There's been a lot of issues about noise complaints and toxic curfews and things like that. Is that a concern that we should have here, looking at the 3i homes and the multi-family units that close to the downtown space there, considering that, we want to have pubs and breweries and just a high area motion going on down there. And not to say that this is something like Rock Row where, we're going to be having, massive live concerts, but thinking more of what's going on in downtown Portland, where a lot of people are complaining that, well, the bar is too loud downstairs.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, actually, and something that we are thinking about quite a bit. The solution really lies in the construction of the buildings and how they're put together. I think when you're dealing, working around the country, you see this everywhere, right? You see the repositioning efforts and uses change. And I mean, our office is in an old mill building, and so you have windows that don't comply with anything. You're missing insulation. Sound kind of gets in everywhere. And I think that's true of Portland. I mean, there's a lot of older buildings. There's some newer buildings. I think what we should do to make sure that we're not going to have that issue is just really take a look at the construction type of these buildings as they're evolving. I think one thing that will make a difference, energy codes where they are now are driving construction to be tighter than it ever has been in the past. And that's kind of a natural noise mitigation approach as well. So I don't really see it being a problem. We haven't seen it as a problem where you're dealing with all new construction like we're dealing with all new road networks. You typically see that where you have older cities that are really evolving into these exciting and vibrant places, and you have old structures that don't meet codes or that have single pane glass or brick with no insulation. So
Right.
I think it's a great concern. I think it's something we should pay attention to in the documentation of the buildings that are happening here. But I think I think it will be mitigated just by the fact that it's new, but I think it's something we should pay attention to.
Yeah,
So-
and understanding construction means and methods is something that's handled separately when those all go to plan in construction. But maybe a consideration of more greenery, trees, bushes, kind of demarcating the spaces between some of the residential and the commercial. That could help as well as just absorbing some of the sound.
Totally agree, 100%. And I think we're planning, Dan had alluded to it a little bit, the whole lot 3 space in the middle is going to be a fairly rich mixture of hard and softscape. And by having residential around the edges, but an absorber in the middle, I think will really help kind of manage that a little bit. And frankly, it was one of the considerations to answer an earlier comment about Downs Road just being this kind of through street. I think when you do that, you not only increase potential traffic speeds, but you also get a lot more sound bouncing back and forth between buildings. So I think having a softer space and a more flexible space adjacent to a real strong retail edge, I think we'll start to manage some of that. So
Great. I guess as with the next iteration, if we could see just kind of noted more focused areas, just calling that out just so that we could see it.
yeah,
Would love to see
absolutely.
that.
Yeah,
Awesome.
for sure.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, Rocky made a good point that probably didn't cover, to Brian's point, on this plan in enough detail, kind of how we've arranged town center. So with Brian's assistance, really to the south, Jim, kind of away from kind of the heart of this intersection is the multifamily. So we're having that be on the south side closest to town center residential.
Right.
3i Home, and I know they're going to do their presentation. They actually have on the first floor some kind of non-residential space closest to our mixed-use buildings. This is the mixed-use building that you'll see soon. And then this pavilion that we've alluded to kind of could be a brewery. And then across the street is another mixed-use building on the first floor being kind of commercial restaurants. So we've tried to, in addition to building construction, kind of cluster-like uses.
Yep.
While having some richness and kind of being mixed, but having the ground floor commercials be near each other and better neighbors and then kind of focusing the true residential kind of more to the south. So, but we can get into more detail at the next round so you understand
Definitely.
that those methods.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. I mean, for certain demographic, that is an ideal location to want to be living with all the sounds included. But then another demographic, maybe not. And,
Right.
Seeing anything that could go in there, again, looking at downtown Portland. But I appreciate your answers. Thank you very much. And I guess the key phrase on this one would be more noted softscapes. Thank you. I'm all set, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And it is my turn. Dan, in terms of the parking lot or parking structure, you might want to take a look at the Westbrook proposal along the Main Street. Don't know how far it's gotten. And I know they had some problems sourcing steel when the price of steel went up, but they had proposed for funding a parking garage with senior housing, affordable senior housing and open space area on the top of it.
Mhm.
So, and it was tied up to a hydroponic garden along the side of it.
Yeah.
So that's something to take a look at. I don't know what stage it's in. But it looked pretty impressive and pretty expensive. But that goes to Jim's question and idea about taking a look at, there's no reason why a parking garage can't be multi-purpose. So that would be something to look at. I'm going to go back to Rick Meinking's pretty much his first comment about the pumping station. And, when the pumping stations are at the Innovation District, or they're to the rear of anything residential and they're kind of out of the way, that's one thing. You really can't see them, or they're blending into the appropriate area. This pumping station is right on Downs Road. So I would like to take a look at, understanding that it's being built now, I would like to take a look at what you've got there, the landscaping, and any fencing. Because all of a sudden we have a pumping station that's kind of the introduction to the center of the town. So I think it would be important for us to take a look at it and provide whatever suggestions and advice we can on how to screen that or how to make it more of a welcoming view to people coming in. When will Market be connected all the way to Higas?
So this subdivision plan approves the ability to connect Downs Road to where Market hands off from Higas Parkway. So it'll be part of this phase one.
And the reason I have a concern about that is as we originally discussed this whole master plan, at some point, Route 1 was going to be, the Route 1 entrance was going to be essentially residential. Was going to be taking more people into the residential area. And the concept that was presented was basically that more people would be coming in directly from Higas or down from Payne. Visitors, trucks, things like that. So it becomes important as you're building along the Downs Road and into this town center area, becomes important to relieve any traffic, as much traffic as you can from the Route 1 residential entrance. So it's good to know that you're going to be connecting that pretty fast. And will that then be the major area, a major route for construction traffic?
Yeah, it's going to be, it certainly won't be the Route 1 end. So we think it's a combination of Market, but also up to Payne Road. And moving well away from kind of the Route 1 residential area of the project.
Okay, very good. What else have I got? Yeah, you talked about Lot 4. That encompasses the grandstand, and it seemed to me from one of your slides that you're going to be working in that area this spring and summer. When is the grandstand going down?
Before we are working in that area, we're working right now on selecting a contractor to kind of remove those structures. So we anticipate it's going to be, in the late spring, I think at this point. Early summer. And so both the grandstand and then the clubhouse would be removed before the entirety of Lot 4 can be developed.
Okay. I've got a concern about parking, and it's going to bleed over into the presentation from 3I. And it was mentioned in the memo from the staff. At some point, I have a real concern that we're going to double promise on-street parking. That it's easy to say, well, we'll add 10 more spaces with on-street parking.
Mhm.
So I now have a concern as we get into the town center that we are creating a situation of on-street parking where visitors will not be welcome, or where people who live in the 3I building won't be able to actually have on-street parking, and they'll be looking to go elsewhere because somebody will want to come in and go to the restaurant. So I would like to see a scorecard of on-street parking, and that was mentioned in the staff memo. They might not have used the term scorecard, but we've talked about it before. If not the last meeting, then the prior meeting, I think I mentioned the need for now to start really keeping track of on-street parking before we as a board start saying, yes, it's fine for those 10 spots to be counted as part of your parking allotment, when indeed it might not be fine.
Sure, we can do that. Happy to.
Okay. I also seem to recall from the master plan that there was a road off of Market Street as you head towards Downs Road on the right that circled in back of what is now 3I in that corner building that contained a larger parking area that was going to be accessible, and I don't see that on this plan.
We're not planning a road there. We're planning interconnected driveways, one for 3I that would connect to the mixed use building. Obviously, you don't this evening have the mixed use building kind of site plan to see that connection. But that would be how access would occur to the parking behind both 3I and then the mixed use building.
And nothing would exit onto the Downs Road?
No, they would connect to, this might be the best graphic to show you. So if you can see it here, this intersection location driveway would be that driveway. You know, that would connect into parking behind the mixed use building. You don't have the benefit of obviously seeing the mixed use building, but it's roughly where the box is for lot 1. And then 3I, you see their tentatively planned driveway here. That would be the access to 3I, and maybe their sketch plan would do a better job of showing it, obviously.
All right, could you
Um,
show me again where the driveway,
See
the
this,
3I?
see that the cross hatching, it's right here, if you can see the cursor. Let me go to a better,
So there's an entrance and an exit to the parking lot, one on Market Street and one on Scarborough Downs Road?
yes. Yep. This shows it a little bit better. But if I go to, so Rachel,
What's to prevent people from using that, saying, oh, look, parking over there, on their way in and using that for parking to go to the restaurant or to
signage
go
and-
to the town center, the amenities building?
signage and design of where the parking is and access to it. We can work further on that with the board through site plan for the mixed use building. But our intention on the mixed use building, not to get into site planning details, but to have parking closest to Market Street and being separate for retail, restaurant parking in addition to on street, and then having parking that's more behind the building, which would be assigned and signed. If you're a resident, you'd have a number and it would say resident parking only, is how we intend to address it, but we can review those details with the board.
I think you need to, because if the on-street parking is going to be limited, basically, or available for visitors and extremely limited, people are going to say, that's a parking space. And they're going to be using that, and they're going to be taking spaces away from residents and spaces away from the business on the corner. You can put up all the signs you want, and people looking for a parking space are kind of ignore them. They're going to look at it as a giant parking lot unless there's some sort of enforcement or gate or barrier, some sort of barrier. The other reason to be very careful about the on-street parking is deliveries. If you have a residential area, a building, you're going to have FedEx coming by. You're going to have deliveries made. You're going to have DoorDash. You're going to have a lot of activities of people going into the buildings. And if they don't have spaces to park in the front, those trucks are going to try and find places to park again in the rear, and then try to figure out how to get into the buildings from there. So I still have some reservations around the traffic flow and how you're going to be managing the parking in that area. So I am hopeful that you're going to come up with some ideas about how that is managed.
Yeah, and
The 3I building, will they have access all the way through? In other words, you say that there's one driveway essentially for the 3I. Can they use the one on Market Street as well?
the intention is to have them be interconnected. Yes, so far, that's been the intention. Yep.
Okay, without some careful design, that's going to become a cut through. for people who decide they're coming from Higas Parkway and they want to eliminate the three-way stop at Market and Scarborough Downs. That will become a cut through, whether it's supposed to be or not. It's human nature. Sooner or later, they would see a way to do that. I can see me doing that exactly. So I think that whole back area in terms of parking has to have some very careful consideration.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think that team's ready to present their approach to traffic calming and surface treatment back there. So those are great comments. I think they can begin to address those this evening.
And that's why we decided to sequence this the way
All
we
right.
did. So sequencing this, is there any other questions from the board? Are you comfortable? Do you have any additional questions, Dan?
No, I think we're great. Appreciate the time this evening, and we're going to work with staff on tuning up our submission for another round of preliminary. So I appreciate all the great comments and questions, and we'll be back to you with some follow-up answers.
And I also like the intersection as you've got it at Market and the Downs. I think that's going to be, it's visually, it looks good. It looks welcoming. And I think that's been the design all the way along. We just have to make sure that we're not encouraging people to zip through there.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Great, thank you.
The next item is Preservation of Affordable Housing LLC is requesting a sketch plan review of a 4-story, 16,830 square foot housing facility for physically disabled persons. The project is located at the intersection of Scarborough Downs Road and the future Market Street, assessors map R52, lot 4 for the town. Eric?
Thank you. So Preservation of Affordable Housing, partnering with 3i, is seeking a sketch plan review from the planning board of a 51-unit housing, multifamily housing for folks with disabilities. This would be split between 31 one-bedroom units, 16 two-bedroom units, and 4 three-bedroom units. At this point is just a sketch plan to discuss the layout, building orientation, and possible site design for the project. It would be followed by a formal site plan application, which would need to be reviewed by the planning board. Staff has provided a full site plan review set of comments for ease of site plan preparation for the applicant with parking, net residential density calculations, and design of the building needing additional detail or review by the board come the full site plan. And with that, I would turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And for 3i.
Autumn, I can't share my screen just yet. I am. Oh. Got it now.
Good evening. My name is Paul Lynette. I'm the founder and president of 3i Housing of Maine. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We established our operations in 2020. I'm very pleased to be here this evening to open a discussion about our innovative supportive housing project, the first of its kind in Maine, that we believe will be an integral part of the Downs development. Our name is descriptive of our mission. As the materials presented to the board detail, 3i Home at the Downs is designed with the utmost attention to the environment. Our building is comprised of 51 individual apartments featuring universal design principles to promote independent living options for people with mobility impairments and physical disabilities. That's the first I in our name. Independent living options. Through a federal grant we have been awarded, innovative assistive smart home technology will be tailored to our tenants. Innovative technology, that's the second I. It will enable our tenants to exercise autonomy throughout the building and in their individual units. Through our building features, which will include passive house principles, which our architect will respond to later, and our programming, we believe that this project will set a standard so that people with disabilities can live within the community rather than be relegated to institutional placement. That's the third I, an integrated home and community setting in a vibrant downtown area, close to work, recreation, and socialization. The vision that I just summarized is the result of focus groups, feedback from potential residents, and most importantly, the lived experiences of people in Maine and elsewhere who understand the need for affordable, accessible housing. I want to thank the board for your consideration. And as I turn it over to Corey Fellows, Vice President of Real Estate Development at our co-developer, Preservation of Affordable Housing, I do want to express 3i Homes' gratitude to the Crossroads Group for their collaboration throughout this process, and to the design team that POA has brought with us here tonight. The fact that this dream team has come together around the 3i Home concept speaks volumes to their commitment to the project, one that will be a model to address a key social determinant of health, accessible supportive housing for literally thousands of people in our state. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. I'll be here if I can answer questions. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Corey Fellows.
Thanks, Paul, and thank you, board. It's great to be here on the other side of the podium tonight. My name is Corey Fellows. I'm here tonight representing Preservation of Affordable Housing, or POA. We're a Boston-based national nonprofit that owns and manages over 13,000 units of affordable housing in 11 states. We're not yet in Maine, but we're excited about changing that soon. And I'm personally excited about that as a long-term Scarborough resident, the fact that this has all come together to this point. We've still got a long way to go, but we're excited to be at this stage. This is a big milestone for us. I want to briefly introduce our team. You know Drew from Goral Palmer, Gary Kane, our project architect from the architectural team out of Massachusetts. We also are working with a Portland-based accessibility consultant as well. And then I believe online are Nick Aceto from Aceto Landscape Architects, as well as my POA colleague, Vita Shklovsky, who's our senior project manager. And you'll probably be seeing and hearing from her in the future. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Drew so he can get into the plan, and also happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Corey. Drew Gagnon with Goral Palmer. I'm going to walk the board through our proposed plan here today. That's the project team that Corey just introduced. This is kind of showing context relative to the master plan that was actually in front of you at the last agenda meeting. So you can see Scarborough Downs Road cutting through the middle of the page here in Market Street, creating that lot one that we were just looking at. This is that anticipated location of that mixed use building that we were also talking about. And then the highlighted with the colors here is the 3i home site. I'm just putting this back on the engineering drawings that we were just looking at for a little bit more context. The raised intersection that had some discussion was up here. So you can see the context and 3i home project looking right at Cross Street. Regarding the access that we were also just talking about, we're proposing an access off Scarborough Downs Road, right at the southern portion, so plan right portion of the lot. And then working with the Crossroads development team, we'll be providing secondary access down along Market Street. So this would be off site, but it would be interconnected driveways. So development program, and Paul touched on these, we have 51 apartments. The breakdowns right here on the screen, 100% affordable, 100% accessible, and 100% independent living for this proposed development. Some of the design parameters, and this is a zoomed in version of the site plan here that we really wanted to convey to the board here, was completely accessible design of this parking lot. So as you can see, we have an abundance of ADA parking between van and standard ADA parking, as well as some additional standard spaces located on the plan south. So we've really taken a careful attention to the accessible nature of this development. And some of these highlight are flush granite curb, Wooner style, drop off area and parking lot along the backside here. So this would all be at grade. We'll have appropriate slopes, but essentially one big ADA ramp, if you will, right across the front of this parking here. There's some raised planter islands located along here to break up the parking in this area. And then some nice paver treatments and material changes as you're working through the site here. So you can see that with the different brick looking hatch. Those are anticipated to be pavers and utilized as also crosswalks throughout the site here. We're proposing a 22-foot drive aisle on the southern part of the site, as well as a 24-foot drive aisle kind of on the planned south portion. So we'll be requesting a waiver, as the staff memo noted, from 25 feet to 24 and 22 on this side. We provided the extra 2 feet clearance within the parking spaces here to still give that 42-foot section that we've been holding. The main entry of the building, and Gary Kane from the architectural team will get into this, but is located on the northern side of the building facing Scarborough Downs Road, providing some outdoor placemaking area here. We're going to detail this out during the site plan application, but we provided a nice space here to engage with the street. Utilities and drainage wise, we have just typical utility connections coming from Scarborough Downs Road, and we're planning these and incorporating them into the subdivision design as well. So fire, domestic water services, underground 3-phase power, sanitary sewer, as well as natural gas connections near the anticipated service entry of the building, which is on the planned south side. So jumping back up to the first page here, we have a few standard parking spaces with a small drive aisle for small deliveries and just kind of the service area, if you will, of the site. Drainage wise, there's a main trunk line that cuts through the site and goes down to the planned gravel wetland down on the south of the site. So we're anticipating using that for some of our drainage collection, as well as a few other basins. And all the runoff will be tributary to that gravel wetland. So there will be none on site as far as stormwater treatment facilities. Getting into the parking, we're proposing 41 total on-site parking spaces between van accessible, standard ADA, and parallel parking. Standard spaces are along the south side of the building. So again, jumping back up here, these are the ones I'm talking about. So we understand this is, we're requesting less parking than the multifamily standard from the town of Scarborough. And really this is based on what the applicant feels that the development of the program actually needs. So we're in a really unique situation where this is a completely accessible accessible building. And we really feel that 41 total on-site parking spaces are what this development is going to need. And in order to justify some of this, we found a similar development in kind of on the outskirts of Boston, as you will. That's 0.6 spaces per unit. And this project on-site provides 0.8 spaces per unit. If you include the on-street parking in the immediate vicinity of the project, we're closer to 1.4 spaces per unit. So in our application package, we provided 33 spaces that are directly adjacent to the site. We're not requesting or trying to allocate those spaces specifically for this development. Again, the 41 on-site parking spaces we feel are adequate for the site and for this use. So they were just intended to show that there's additional spaces for visitors or additional abundance of spaces around the site, but we do feel that the 41 on site are adequate for this use. This is another conceptual rendering of the site here. And I'm going to let Gary Kane talk about this one a little bit more.
Good evening, folks. Gary Kane with the architectural team. We've done a lot of work with Corey's team over the years, and we're very excited to work on this project. Accessible housing is very near and dear to myself, as well as so you've heard from other members of the team. So it's an exciting project, and really Dan and Rocky have put together a very thoughtful master plan, and we're really excited to work on the first building that's going to be, right around the town center. Actually, if I could just back up to the master plan. I guess you could see you could see the cursor. So there's just a couple of ideas in looking at the building, taking the master plan that Brian's team has put together. This was just a large volume, a block. We haven't departed from that general master plan, but we're adding real dimension and texture to that block. We have a couple of ideas. One of the things, as I looked at the master plan in the town center, I thought that there was a real interesting asymmetry, almost symmetry, but subtle asymmetry across around about Market Street and the center of the town center. And as you notice, on the street that borders the left side, there's no cross street. It is a T intersection, but the buildings are separated, and you've got a sort of a different condition. And on Cross Street, again, you have a T-shaped intersection, and you're basically hitting the blunt face of the building. So that's an interesting asymmetry, and I think it adds for a little real unique or an interest around the center, that you're not just treating every corner, very much the same. So we thought that was just an interesting piece of the design. So we just put together, just two basic ideas, or a few basic ideas. The common space is primarily a residential building. On the ground floor, on plan left, sort of plan west, around this corner besides having a Downs Road entrance, all of our sort of common space and public space is located, plan left. We also have a main entrance off of our driveway side. So this is the sort of the active side of the project. I could say that plan right is the service side, but this is a residential building. You don't have a tremendous amount of service. We've got a little bit of, we basically have got maintenance entrance, and sort of we've got a trash activity that has to happen at this southeastern portion. But I think the idea was to focus the real public activity along the north, facing the town center. As you look at this plan, the building, the program, I think we're fully at sort of the volume and shape. We're at a schematic design level. This landscape plan is still conceptual. I think what we're showing you for the sort of the layout of the roadway and the patterns is advanced. When we do make our next submission, the landscape will be more developed. Just take the green with a grain of salt, or any kind of tree locations, but this is basically the space that we have around the building to work with, and it'll be much more developed as we continue. As I mentioned, we have our active parts of the program is plan left, and as we were talking about just the parking, how the parking is going to function, with this building being 100% accessible, we would have loved to have had an underground parking garage for residents. I think this is a hybrid approach. I think what we wanted to do is we wanted to create at least a covered access from the drop-off area, into the building on the parking lot side. And so the common areas are basically designed so that we can enter off of Downs or enter off of the parking. Any kind of package deliveries or drop-offs can also happen along the driveway, as Drew was mentioning, the sort of the flush curb condition along the south side of the building. We have taken the overall design. I would say that the exterior envelope, this is still sort of conceptual. This was the first, we presented to the team for the first time a week or 2 weeks ago. Just a couple of simple ideas. We basically have just looked at the exterior of the building. We tried to design it with sort of two textures. The materials are primarily going to be a fiber cement panel, a combination of panels and lap siding. And we've kind of designed that with sort of just two different sort of colored textures, a sort of darkish texture and a light texture, sort of just lacing them and just providing some variety around the building. And then we've got some masonry, some, sort of white color that sort of is signifying the main entrances and the public areas around the building. So just a couple of different materials to sort of break up the facades and sort of show what the program is. Additionally, along this sort of axis, which is coming from Cross Street, we wanted to create a series of bays. Our living room bays, we've got a series of 5 bays that sort of ends the vista looking down Cross Street. And at the base of them, since this is it's a fully residential building, we've designed these to sort of look like direct level entrances off of the sidewalk. They're going to be sort of like a front stoop. All of the apartments are accessed off of an internal corridor, but we're just building a front stoop, hopefully with like a raised bed, something for the residents to be able to use, a raised flower bed, and just some personal space there, but something to activate this facade so that we don't just have a wall of windows. And we're trying to just add a little bit of activity as you're entering, coming down Downs, coming into the town center. On the parking lot side, just a similar treatment. We just, we're using some use of some color just to sort of signify some of the public spaces of the building. Floors 2, 3, and 4 are all residential spaces, residential use within the building. Few of the comments that were made earlier relative to noise and overall construction. We're showing solar panels. We're hoping to do a passive house building, high performing envelope, energy efficient systems. All of that does lend itself, just as Brian was pointing out earlier, between high performing windows, whether it's triple pane glazing, very tight envelope, and exterior walls that are much thicker and much more insulated than a lot of construction that we've everything, all of the codes are just sort of leading there, but we're budgeting those right now. Everything is not finalized, but that's what we're hoping to be able to achieve. And lastly is just a small, again, these are conceptual, just a rendering looking from the town center towards the main entrance and the common areas, which are all on the lower right side. And again, we want to just sort of develop the landscape and that sort of ground treatment that's happening all around the building, develop that a little bit for to another level before we submit for the next time we're here. I think I'll just do a quick closing.
I do want to go back just one real quick, and one of the points I forgot to discuss before I hand it over to Gary is kind of furthering our discussion on the cut through and how this site is designed. So we've really paid special attention to detail for trying to create an access aisle that doesn't feel like it's something that if you're on Downs Road, you want to get to Market Street, right? So we know that there's going to be a connection kind of planned west and south of this site to Market Street, but we don't want that to be the public roadway for a cut through. So, we've come up with some tighter radiuses than we'd probably normally do in a parking lot, but also still while trying to accommodate emergency vehicles. Part of that is also the 22-foot drive aisle when you enter. So it feels small. It doesn't feel as wide as the road you're coming in on. So it feels like it's not meant to be a place for someone to turn left and to go and cut through. In addition to that, I mean, we have material changes along the crosswalk, which are going to just feel like you're in more of a residential setting. And then Gary talked about it briefly, but we're evaluating whether there's a covered drop off in this location. Really, we want to actually bring that covered drop off as far into the access aisle as we can, whether it's cantilevered, so without any type of columns or anything prohibiting that. But that would kind of really give a better sense of this feels like a residential, this feels like a private setting, not necessarily just something for, the general public to just use and cut through. So another key to this is we haven't developed the full landscaping plan, which Nick Casito from ALA is going to do. He's going to do a great job on trying to create visual cues so that it feels like from a structural point of view, you're not entering a right of way, right? We're entering a private space. So I did want to just touch on that. And then going back to just closing here. So the applicant and the development, the development's intent is site plan in the next couple months, following concurrently with the subdivision schedule that was just in front of you. The goal is to obtain approval ahead of the July 2023 Maine State Housing Authority application that was mentioned previously. So that's a big deal for funding for the development. And that's our goal for moving forward. So I'm going to turn it back to the board, and we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. This is an item that is available for public comment, but we typically take a break at 8:30. So before we start the public comment, there will be a 5-minute break from whatever time that clock says. We will now reconvene and reconvene to the notice that town hall is closed tomorrow. This is an item that is available for public comment. I will open it to public comment at this point. Is there anybody in the room who would like to comment? Is there anyone online? Hearing none, public comment is closed. Turn this to the over to the board. Let's start down at this end with Jim Hebert.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple questions. With regard to the units, the living units in the house, are they single person or multi-person? And forgive me, could you tell me your name again, sir, please?
Gary Kane.
Gary. Thank you, Gary. I apologize.
No, quite all right. We have, I think it was mentioned, we've got 51 apartments. And here, let me just pull out the breakdown. We've got 31 one-bedroom apartments, 16 two-bedrooms, and 4 three-bedroom units. So there will be multiple, you will have some multiple occupied units, but predominantly more than 50% are one bedrooms.
Great. I'm glad to hear about the tight building envelope, the triple pane windows, building that into your budget as you're picking up on our earlier comments for on the previous agenda item. Sound will be a real consideration here, especially for the folks that are going to be living in this building. So if we can maximize the amount of green space, green sort of sound wall protection against just against this facility, softscapes, as much of it to absorb the sound as possible, because folks may have an issue or sensitivity to a high amount of sound, light, things like that, just depending on what their impairment might be. I'm very happy to see a facility like this here. We just want to make sure that that it's also sort of protected as well from the other, the traffic going through in the space. In the outdoor, speaking of that, in the outdoor placemaking area, similar to my comments earlier, I'd love to see just to either somehow not disguised, but certainly present, strong crash bollards to protect against pedestrians from any vehicles that may go off the road, slide, slip, or for whatever reason. Just sort of protection if that's going to be a large gathering space for pedestrians and folks outside. We want to make sure that those are certainly protected from errant vehicles. My big concern here is the parking. If with a 51 unit building with only 41 on-site parking spaces, it's not even one vehicle per room. And I understand that some folks there may not be able to drive a vehicle and we'll have to have some other arrangements. But I don't see like a bus stop here or a bus drop off. So I'm thinking from the perspective of someone who's there and they don't have a vehicle, how are they going to go and like carry, go to the grocery store or do their, normal day-to-day things that may involve them leaving their home and going elsewhere, whether it's getting groceries, doing any kind of shopping, traveling somewhere. Is it just going to be Uber and Lyft and taxis coming and going through the space, or is there going to be like any coordination? And maybe this is more of a town question, but coordination like Greater Portland Metro for a bus route through here. And maybe that's already been discussed before I was a member of the board. And if it has, forgive me. But I would like to see some kind of route or solution for public transportation in here. Because if we're, and Madam Chair, you mentioned this as well when we're talking about, Drew, you had mentioned a combination of using on-street parking as supplementing parking spots for this building as well. It's starting to raise some red flags as far as capacity just in the entire area, especially if you have it this close to the downtown space. Excuse me. It's this close to the downtown space, and already we're looking at 10, 15 years from now, those on-street parking spots are going to go away if there's a lot more traffic. We need to make sure that we have adequate parking for the residents who live here, the workers and the employees that are working here. And that's just a big concern that I have. So again, maybe that's leads in, again, previous comments on the other application about multi-story parking facility, just to make sure that we have adequate parking for everybody here. Because there is nothing worse than living in a location and going to a spot where you theoretically have it for yourself and then not having it. I lived on the East End in Portland for a while, so I know that feeling very well. So I would like to see what, and maybe this is more in your court, Drew, as far as what GP is able to do with regard to, how are we going to address this parking issue elsewhere? And taking a look at this multi-story parking facility closer, I guess. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and I think, I understand the concern, which is why we wanted to point to a similar development, because again, the unique nature of this development, not having been in Maine or I believe New Hampshire before that, we're kind of cutting edge here, if you will, and we're studying other sites to really develop. Well, what do we think we need? We're not proposing a reduction and telling everyone that they can't have a car here, right? It's just really what we feel like it's actually going to demand at this site. Regarding the public transportation, I know, the overall subdivision's been working on bus stops, whether I think it's going to be around this intersection and then getting the metro to try to get in here eventually at some point. So that's all in the works. I don't think we have any commitments as of tonight or anything like that, but that's certainly something that we're reviewing, and that, is certainly, we're hoping that this project helps generate the metro to come into the project, right? So we're hoping a kind of the combination of all that. And then again, on the on-street parking, we're not going to reserve any of these spaces, obviously, in a public street, in a public right away like that for this lot. It's intended for visitor. It's intended for that kind of shared parking of all the other different uses around it. So we really start with 41 units we feel is adequate for this development, and then the surrounding infrastructure being able to support visitors or the really high demand peak times in conjunction with all the other sites as well. So.
Gotcha. No, I appreciate that, Drew. And again, my only concern is you have, a resident here who can't park their vehicle in one of these marked spaces because they are all taken, and now they have to sort of search around the downs to go and park somewhere else for it. And especially if they're somehow physically impaired, where walking a significant distance is a real issue. I see that as a real big concern for me, just making sure that they have access 100%. Guarantee if they have a vehicle at this building, they should have a dedicated parking spot here, whether that's a sign that's taken care of through 3I or whoever the landlord or management of this facility is. Maybe that's more on them to decide, but and maybe other board members can chime on this as well and finish this thought for me. But and with all due respect, I do understand the comparison we're making here for other areas like this, but we aren't, not yet anyways, the outskirts of Boston. I mean, that's, we're talking about over, 1 million people densely populated down in that space with multiple choices of adequate public transportation, whether it's trains or buses or just a high density of Uber and Lyft that's in that area. We don't really have that where we are in Scarborough for this. So making sure that, the John Smith in this building is able to go outside on their stoop, and they know that they can go and sit at a bus stop, and that bus is going to come by every hour or something like that. And they know they can get dropped off there, or if they can take their car, they can have a spot to go back on. So again, sorry to harp on the parking issue. I'll get off my box now, but that's, not a question, but just a consideration that we really want to focus on, not just for here, but for everything with regard to the downs as we keep going. And Madam Chair, I'm all set for right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Roger.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I have some questions along the same line. I'm inclined to defer to the developers on a project like this, because I like to think that they know their clientele and their residents and their needs and everything. Maybe I can preface my question by asking, the residents who will be living in this facility. Oh, first of all, I just want to say, I think this is a great facility. I think it's a great concept, and I'm really pleased that it's going in right here in Scarborough and right at the Downs. Do the people who are going to be living here, do they have to qualify to a certain level of disability?
Corey Fellows from POA again. We're going to be working that out with Maine State Housing as well as other funding authorities. There typically are tenant selection plans that are required. And you have to abide by applicable fair housing laws, obviously. Based on our discussions with Maine State Housing to this point, we're confident that we will be able to develop a set of criteria for determining eligibility based on physical disabilities. That hasn't been fleshed out yet. I also just take this opportunity to say that, to Roger's point, we have been doing a lot of work with focus groups. We've had listening sessions. Paul, with his group 3I, long before POA ever got involved, had done a lot of legwork with different parts of this population and sort of determining what the needs and preferences were in terms of living space and parking and so forth. So that really was a big part of what informed how we developed this plan, and we'll continue to flesh that out. We're also certainly open to continuing to coordinate with Crossroads on parking solutions, among other things. And as Paul indicated in his intro earlier, it's been a great collaborative process to this point. And also finally, just take the opportunity to say as well that this property will be professionally managed by POA Communities, which is our affiliated property management company. So POA Communities has a lot of experience with, among other things, enforcing parking regulations and including in some tricky contexts with a lot of different competing uses and demands. And then we also have what we call a community impact program, which is essentially resident services, where we partner with a lot of local organizations. And I say that partly because that I believe will be part of the transportation, the overall kind of holistic transportation solution here. In addition to public transportation, we realize that we're not quite at the critical mass where we can do truly transit-oriented development here, but that's sort of aspirational. But we're hoping that we'll be part of getting to that point. And then we anticipate that we'll be partnering with local organizations, medical organizations and others on shuttles and things like that to take people to appointments and other things. So by no means will that solve the parking challenge on its own, but it'll be part of that solution. Thanks.
Corey, while you're still there,
Yes.
will individuals who are not disabled be able to live in these units? Should they, like, say, a child of an adult child of an adult, mother or father who's disabled, would they be able to live in a facility such as this?
Yes, that's a good question. And we fully anticipate that will be the case.
Okay.
It will not be the situation where everyone in a household has to have a physical disability to be able to live there.
Okay.
Can I just jump in? Because this is Paul Lynette. One of the unique features really of this from the get-go is to keep families together. And
Sure.
what can happen is, and it has happened, where people become disabled and families have to be separated and broken up because there simply aren't enough accessible housing units. And so we're not going to solve that problem with the 51, but we are going to make a statement that rather than an institutional bias, which does exist in our society, we can include people in the community, and that includes families of whatever nature, including the one that you just posited, Roger.
Good. Question for Drew, I guess. The on-street parking, is that going to be dedicated parking spots for this facility? Or could anybody who's going to the town center use those spaces if they were going to be available?
The on-street parking on Scarborough Downs Road, so Plan North, is not dedicated to the development at all. It's for public use completely. Everything on site will be dedicated for the residents.
Okay. I think this kind of lends itself to the overall concern that we have about the general parking in the whole area. And as you and Dan have mentioned, you're going to be taking a closer look at that whole situation. Because I just wonder about the parking spaces available on this site. I mean, what if they had visitors coming, and things like that? I mean, that's my concern about that. The staff made a comment in their, one of their comments was about putting in some sort of a condition so people could not bypass the intersection that we talked about previously and make a shortcut through the back of this facility and then down onto Market Street. So I think that's an important thing to consider. And lastly, my last question is on the first floor. If I recall reading correctly, there was there plans to have some commercial activities on the first floor? And if so, was that all the first floor or just the portion closest to the town center?
Hi, Gary Kane from the architectural team. There's no commercial uses in the building, but what we have is on the western side, probably a little less than a third of the footprint of the ground floor is basically our common common and amenity areas. But there are 9 other apartments on the ground level beyond that.
Sure. Okay, good. Thank you. I don't think I have any further questions right now, Rachel, but this is, I think the architectural drawing, at least the preliminary one, is very interesting, and it adds a lot of vibrancy to that area. So looking forward to further discussions about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Jen?
Okay. I also share the concern. Actually, I'm kind of struggling with this because I share the concern that this will in some way by default become I don't want to use bypass, I'll say alternate route for people between Downs Road and Market Street for a number of reasons, many of which we have already discussed either on this project or the one prior. However, that said, we talked about the advantages of that in the prior project. So I'm just conflicted on that. It's going to be a challenge for the operations of this building, but I think from the network overall, the less traffic that you can feed through that key intersection, vehicular traffic, I should say, the better off that will be. So I don't envy, I don't envy you there. I am curious about the choice to site the accessible parking away from the building. And am I correct in assuming that that's because you anticipate more pickup and drop off activity closer to the building, and less perhaps turnover parking, I guess, for lack of a better term, among the accessible spaces that would presumably be for residents? And this catches my eye because it's sort of atypical, right? Like a traditional apartment building would have the accessible spaces as close to the accessible entrance as possible. And actually, in a number of ways, that's the opposite here. There's quite a few of them, but even the short bay of parking, for example, at the end, which is also very close to an entrance, doesn't have accessible parking at them. And so I'm just curious, that was intentional or if that was done purely based on the number of accessible spaces that are warranted here, or sort of what the vision is for the operations of that parking lot?
Yeah, and that's a great point, Jen. So just to clarify, the hatched on, I'll call it on drive aisle parking spaces that are parallel to the building are also ADA. So they're not striped like that, but they have the flush curb condition and they have the drop off and loading area next to it. So to a degree, we have almost everything on this plan south side of the building as ADA parking. So it
Okay.
might be a little misleading with just the striping shown. But yes, and then to your point, we also do anticipate, a higher activity of turnover closer to the drop off area, which was, we wanted to provide that area to pull in and leave without backing up. And kind of a more typical drop off fashion. So that kind of played into it, but I hope that helped a little bit on the sighting of that.
Sure, yeah, mostly just a question. I mean, it makes sense that you would have a lot of this type of parking here. I'm really curious, don't need an answer at this meeting, but perhaps a future meeting, about whether the team from 3i consulted on, or what your thoughts are on the intersection design that was just presented, very specifically from an lowercase a accessibility standpoint. So is this an intersection that, in your opinion, knowing your the population that you represent and that is likely to live in this facility, is that a design that is friendly and usable for them? So that's just something to think about. I think it's someone used the term universal design, which I just really love. And there's a lot of literature out there about, capital ADA is a federal requirement. All of these projects have to comply with that. But frankly, it's good for all of us, right? Like, everyone gets a little older, or you have a stroller, or you're wheeling a delivery in. And so I always think of it from that context, but very specifically from people, and you represent this. That's how I see this. You represent this population in a way that we will not know. And so I'm curious, and you can work among your teams in that way, but if you have anything to offer to that design, anything that perhaps we have overlooked or the rest of the team has overlooked, I think that would be really wonderful input for making it better for all of us and for your residents. Just for a question of clarity, Drew, I believe you said that based on the development's experience, the amount of desired parking that's been determined to be needed for this facility is accommodated on site. Is that right?
Correct. Yep. That's within the 41.
Okay. And so anything utilization of anything offsite or in addition to that would be in addition, not necessarily based on our ordinance, but based on the experience of the project.
Correct.
Am I correct in understanding that there will be no direct access to the sidewalk facility on Downs Road from individual units?
Correct. And we actually talked about that quite a bit internally with the team. And again, sketch plan level, we're still working through everything here, but the intention is to have some sort of buffer there. Yes.
Okay. And so I once lived in a long linear building like this, and I have no mobility challenges. And I had a unit that fronted out on where I wanted to go. And I always had to go like all the way down and out around another building. So I kind of feel this a little bit, but there are some advantages, I'm sure, of doing it this way, that you can sort of more securely control access in and out. But I just think that I was happy to hear the input about sort of the integration and activation of the Downs facade of this building with the sidewalk frontage. I like that it's sited close, and that you're looking to plant and otherwise have that space be activated by residents, I think will be will elevate the use here and also be consistent with a lot of the other visions that we've heard about for this portion of the project overall. I really appreciated the prior comment about transit, and there is quite a lengthy background on that one for the Downs overall. I think, like as was stated, I think this is a terrific inch in that direction. Like if a project like this doesn't really help encourage transit to come onto the Downs, then goodness, I am not sure what what would. And I would hope that with continued dense development at this intersection and in the town center overall, that we can continue to sort of inch in that direction. I do have a question actually for staff. So we've decided that, or determined that on-street parking isn't dedicated to this building or any other of the buildings here, that it's sort of for public use. And I can't remember if on any other projects we have seen this, or if this is to come later or not to come at all. Is it regulated in any way? Like, is it time restricted, any of the on-street parking here, or it's just as long as you want for however long you want?
I haven't seen anything that has it time restricted. It's just open on-street parking.
Okay. This popped into my mind when we were talking about deliveries or other sort of parking needs on site that are not accessible, maybe. So maybe it's a home therapy, someone that's coming to give therapy, or a cleaning person. I'm not really sure. Someone that's coming to visit a person here that doesn't necessarily have a hang tag allowing them to park in any of these spaces. The options for them then would really only be these 7 spaces at the end. Is that right? Or on street parking?
Correct, yeah, or on street, yep.
Okay. And again, I'm going to put my trust in your team and assume, or correct me if I'm wrong, that is sufficient for a building of this size.
Yeah, and again, we're going to provide more justification in our site plan application. Intent tonight was to introduce it, but yeah, based on our research, and again, we'll keep digging into it, but
Okay.
that is adequate.
The other option that I wondered, and this is my last question, is whether or not there's the opportunity. So I'm not actually sure. I'm looking at the same plan, I guess, which I don't think shows. Does this show the lot line?
It does. It's and
I see like part of a lot line.
it's over here, and then it carries through because of it's shown as gray because it's
Okay.
part of the subdivision. But real quick,
So you're
Jennifer-
really maxed out on this site.
Correct. Now, this lot line isn't fixed yet. We're still working with Crossroads and the development team on exactly where that sets, but it's somewhere likely in this location.
Okay, so that answers my question. I was going to see if there is any room on site to bank parking should you need it in the future, and the answer to that obviously would be no. But given the location of this building in proximity to the other things that we know are coming online, including this big box that you've labeled future parking, I think it would be great if there was an opportunity. The management may be tricky, but the opportunity to rely on some shared parking. So for example, if there's an office use or some sort of compatible use nearby where the demand is an off time for what may be needed here. And that's not specific to this particular site, but in general, as we sort of move into the heart of this project. That's all that I have, and I really appreciate this project, and I look forward to seeing the rest of it come through design.
Thank you, Jen. Rick?
Yes, thanks for bringing this to Scarborough. I think this is something that's certainly, there's a need for it. My understanding, your involvement with Maine State Housing, they do require you to do, a better than code building. You do have to do some sort of, and you alluded to the passive house, which I think is a great you're going from the code requirement of 3 ACH to 0.6. So you're going to have a fantastic envelope. You're going to have great windows, probably triple glaze. And so to my colleague's comment about noise, I think there's some inherent construction methods here that will help keep it quiet in there. I'm reminded of the hotel that went up on 4th Street. East Brown Cow, I believe, built that. And a year later, they had to go and redo the entire outside because they got tired of issuing earplugs for those that faced 4th Street because of the noise coming from the bars and stuff like that. So it is an issue. And as we move into a downtown district, it will certainly be of this board's concern that we minimize the noise inside the buildings. I'm assuming because you're saying this is independent living, there is no state licensing requirements or anything like that. You're not going for any license.
Yes.
So then, to Jen's point, I see where there's probably going to be services brought to folks living there. You can't escape that. My experience, 10 years in a long-term care facility, I recognize that there's a lot. On a holiday, you have every buddy picking up mom and dad to go and take them to their house for Christmas dinner. You're going to get traffic. I am worried about the traffic. And so I'm just going to ask this question. Why did you choose a 4-story building instead of a 6-story building when you're allowed to build something 6 feet, 6 stories in this area and not 4 stories? Building up can be a little cheaper. It has challenges, especially if you're talking about an elevator, whether you're going to do a bore or you're doing a cable and things of those nature. But I'm just throwing it out there that there could be a way in which we could get more on-site parking by adjusting the footprint of the building, maybe going up, maybe the middle goes up and you could shrink in the sides a little bit and allow for more internal lot space that would allow for some additional parking. I'm just concerned. And 22 aisle drive width, I know there's some pros and cons, less impervious, but now you have tighter distance between cars coming and going. And I'm not sure how I feel about, the waiver request of reducing drive aisle when we're not even getting the, in my opinion, enough ancillary, I'll call it ancillary parking, because I think that's going to be the drawback here is the services being brought to these folks shouldn't be minimized. It's going to be traffic. And so I have some concerns with that. And I just would like to see if maybe you could address it with the footprint of the building itself and maybe resolving some of those issues. I applaud, and I'm assuming because I'm reading into some of the pictures here, but I'm thinking you're going VR, variable refrigerant flow system, all heat pumps, tying in with an electrical system that you probably don't have enough roof space. Certainly if you go up, you're going to maybe shrink the building. You'd lose a little bit of roof coverage for the PV. So you're not going to be a total net zero building. And I don't think that's your intent, is it, to go net zero? You're just doing some on-site generation to be responsible stewards.
That is correct. At the moment, we are not net zero, and even at the moment right now, we're hoping for passive. We're hoping for solar PV. It's all in budgeting at this point, but
Yeah.
that's where we're.
Well,
hoping to
again,
land.
you got Main State Housing. You have to follow their rules too, and they've got some
Quite stringent.
construction requirements if you're going to utilize some of their assets. On that same note, with the VR, I'm guessing VRFs, and you've got a couple of penthouses up there. I don't know if that's for the elevator machinery or what have you, but I'd kind of like to see the detail of the edges of the roof. And is there an opportunity to build those up a little bit higher just to do a little bit of screening? Not that I want to, me personally, I love to see solar and I love to see VRFs, but I'm a geek. And not everybody likes to see those big steel boxes, knowing that they're got a COP of 3.2 when it's -5 degrees out. Real good energy savers. So I'd like to see if maybe your design team could take a look at the facade and see if maybe there's a way to do a little extra shielding as it's downtown and you're going to have other buildings. And some people just don't like to look at mechanical equipment on roofs all the time. But I think, generally speaking, I think my other colleagues have certainly addressed a lot of things here. So my big takeaways or my big ask for you is maybe looking at the footprint of the building and see if there might be a way in which we could get the parking situation a little bit better than what it is. And also check the newly approved EV ordinance that the town of Scarborough has. We're pretty aggressive about that in this town. That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try and wrap this up because my colleagues have done a wonderful job. They've been talking, I've been going through my notes and crossing off things. But I do want to indicate and let you folks know that I'm with my colleagues that this is a wonderful project for the town. And I look forward to it coming back to us in more detail. A couple of things. One, I'm going to use a term that Corey Fellows must be terribly familiar with, and that's talking about robust landscaping. So as you are looking at the landscaping, I'm going to be looking at how robust it is. That includes how you're going to handle the outer doors, the doors to the outside from the apartments, those little patio areas. There are other buildings in the Downs that have that sort of an arrangement, and I'm not saying copy them, but you might want to take a look at how other people have, other developers have handled that. And I'm thinking of the Uplands and a couple of the apartments or the condos, I guess, along Downs Road. That's an opportunity for landscaping that's both pleasing to the people in the apartments and a wonderful visual for the street. I echo what the staff have talked about, the bike racks out there. I don't know if you're planning on having bike racks inside, a bike room inside. That's something to consider. That's happening in one of the other developments in town. That place also has indoor trash receptacles. I don't know if you're expecting people to take their trash outside, or if there is going to be some sort of an indoor facility where they can take at least their recycles. Certainly, that's something to take a look at. My druthers is that you really do not count the on-street parking at all as you're making any calculations. So according to our ordinances that your building requires 87 off-site parking spaces or off-street parking spaces. And you've got, I think, 44 that I counted. There may be more. I'm just not convinced that that is adequate. So as all of my colleagues have mentioned, a problem with that, I'm going to add my voice to that. Because you also have, as you're looking at it from the staff memo, lots with 40 or more spaces require 15% of the parking lot be landscaped. So the full site plan that comes before us has got to have that sort of a landscape or come to us for a waiver. you need to, you are going to need to do that. I suspect lots with 15 or more spaces shall be broken up with trees, landscaped islands, grade changes, low walls, and other features. They still need to be accessible. So that sort of a design needs to be extremely careful. As I look at the access and what I will no longer call a cut through, because I will try not to cut through there. It seems to me that one possibility, if you're really looking at a 22-foot drive aisle, is to make that all one way. As it exists now, it's very, very narrow. And you might want to really, as I said, strongly consider looking upon that as a one-way drive aisle. That also means that folks will be less inclined to cut through if they can only go one way. You have the parking spaces, parallel parking along the building. Folks who come in the wrong way onto that drive aisle are going to have to turn around to park in those parallel spaces. Making that whole a one way actually takes care of that. So I think you need really to think so carefully about how this parking is going to work, knowing that we don't want to give residents a hunting license to get a spot. That they should have enough space in their own facility and next to their own homes, that they don't have to go out on the street. They don't have to wander through across the street into other parking areas. But all of the parking really needs to be related to the building and interconnected. So I look forward to how you're going to think about that. There are a few other mentions here in the staff memo that I'm sure you'll take a look at, the continuous internal walkways, space making, or place making. And I look forward very much to your coming back to us. And I think we will be able to get this done for you, especially if you work carefully with the staff and follow through with their advice. I think the timeline that you have presented to us, I think that's doable, especially with your careful work with the staff. So thank you very much.
Good, thank you.
We now have the O-Pee-Chee Construction Company with a proposed hotel. And that is item 4.02. O-Pee-Chee Construction Corporation requests a sketch plan review of a 113-room hotel located at 205 Southborough Drive. The property is further identified as Assessor's Map R37, Lot 48E. I am going to combine this discussion with item number 502. O-Pee-Chee Construction Corporation requests a plan review for a temporary gravel stockpile at 200 Southborough Drive. The property is further identified as Assessor's Map R37, Lot 48E. So we will start with the discussion of the sketch plan. Once we are satisfied with the discussion with the sketch plan, we will simply move into the discussion of the gravel stockpile. Eric?
Just to give a brief update, I know the hour is sort of getting a little late. At the February 21st Planning Board meeting, the board requested that the applicant provide a sketch plan for the proposed development that was considered as a site plan for a preload in that area at 205 Southborough Drive. The applicant has provided that, showing the overall layout, parking and grading. The site plan for the stockpile, we're reviewing jointly here, as Rachel just mentioned. Staff's primary comments revolved around confirming that the building height would meet the 60-foot maximum height for the B2 zoning district. But we've also included full site plan review comments for ease of full site plan submission by the applicant. On the site plan side of things, the staff has provided a draft motion for the board's consideration if it's comfortable with the sketch plan at this point, and similarly comfortable with the preload stockpile application. And with that, I would turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And for the developer.
Thank you. Before we get going, am I able to share my screen, Autumn? Thank you.
And by the way, for those of you who are new to the planning board, Eric did make a comment that it's getting late. We have gone to 11:30 and 12 o'clock. I suspect that we will not break those records today.
We'll do everything we can to not. All right. Maybe. All right, that's working now. All right. Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Planning Board. My name's David Sherborne. I'm an architect and vice president at O-Pee-Chee Construction. We're a design build contractor located in the Lakes region of New Hampshire. We have designed and built over 50 hotels throughout New England over the last couple of decades. I'm here with Maureen McGlone, civil engineer from Ransom Consulting. We're representing 491 Payne LLC, who's the landowner and developer for this particular project. I'll keep it short. This is obviously the site plan. We'll sort of run through sort of the basic programming of the hotel itself, what we're looking to provide, and then I know that there was some staff comments, a memo that was sent out on Friday, and we've sort of got some verbal responses to respond to those, and we'll open it up to some questioning as well. In terms of the basic site layout and programming of the building, you can see here on the site plan, it's proposed as a 4-story hotel, 113 rooms, located on the southern edge of the property with the main entrance for guests at the northwest corner of the building itself. The parking lot connects into part of the existing parking lot of the Homewood Suites to the east of this particular property project. There is Sebago Brewing to the north, and also to the north of the site is Pizza Plus. That extension of the existing parking lot runs south and then turns west, where we've got a cul-de-sac at the entry point to the hotel. And we're also proposing utilizing the existing curb cut along Payne Road. And the purpose of that would really be for the utilization of emergency vehicles only. It's not intended for guests of the hotel entering and exiting the site. It's really just use of emergency vehicles. So as I just briefly stated, it's an extended stay hotel. It's an unbranded hotel, so it's not affiliated with a Hilton or a Marriott. It's independent. 4 stories tall. I can confirm one of the staff comments was relating to maximum height of the building. We are at 44 feet, which is below the 60 feet permitted within this zoning district. It's a 12,000 square foot building footprint. Overall, we're at 48,000 square feet. I will show you shortly in the floor plans, but guest amenities are somewhat limited compared to a lot of sort of branded hotels. There's a small sitting lounge, an outdoor patio, and a small fitness room. Beyond that, there is no food service for guests. There's no breakfast or any other bar or any other amenities beyond that. There was a little bit of confusion. I can clarify that a little bit. We are proposing 137 new parking spaces to be built as part of this hotel project. 114 are assigned to the hotel itself, with 23 that will be leased to Sebago Brewery at completion of the project. Going over, there was some comments in terms of bulk and massing. We can just confirm that. Obviously, the first few here are just frontages, which we're all compliant with. I will point out maximum building coverage, 50% Maximum, we're currently proposing 12%, maximum lot coverage, 85% maximum permissible. We're currently proposing 55%. Building height again, we're under the 60-foot max. And we meet the buffers and obviously providing the 114 parking spaces, which is slightly more than one per room. In terms of where we are with the project status, we started back in October having a consultation with staff. Barry Stowe from our office and Mark Woggle, one of the co-owners of the property, met with staff. And based on that consultation, we then reached out to the fire department, in particular looking at utilizing the curb cut off Payne Road. There was some feedback and some tweaks that were made to the site plan, which is where we are today. And the initial feedback from the fire department was pending town approval and planning board that they were okay with the approach that we were taking there. Obviously, we were here last month, and this is part of that continuing in process that we're happy to work with the board and the staff to get this through to site plan approval. And in our anxiousness to expedite the process as much as possible, we did file for a full site plan application earlier today or this afternoon. We understand that there's at risk and there's going to be feedback here that we may have to make some adjustments to that. So we're happy to answer any questions that come up from that. Beyond through the town, we know we've got some main DEP modifications for the preload and the hotel that we have to make. We've reached out for a pre-application as part of that amendment to the site location. And then there's obviously stormwater law as well. I think, as you can probably tell, between last month and this month, we're trying to expedite the process as much as we can. The property owner is excited for this project and looking to start construction as soon as possible this year. So here's the site plan. We talked briefly about it. I can move on to the floor plan. So this is our first floor plan right here. There's 8 structural bays on the left-hand side, which is the westernmost portion of the building facing Payne Road, with the entrance of the cul-de-sac. And through here, we've got a small reception area. Adjacent to that is a small seating lounge. Opposite that, we've got a small fitness room, and an elevator and stairs up to the upper floors at this western end of the building, a small guest laundry, and a small vending area. The remainder of the rooms, approximately 350 square feet. This being an extended stay with it being extended stay really means that there's a in-room small kitchenette. So there's facilities for people to be able to cook and provide food rather than it just be bedroom and bathroom. Moving up to the upper floor, we really see a continuation of the guest rooms in the same manner as the first floor, but obviously on the left-hand side, what was sort of administration and public amenity space now becomes guest rooms, and that's applicable for floors 2, 3, and 4. The next page is what we have envisioned currently for the exterior treatment of the building. We've included in the full site plan application earlier today a narrative, but the direction we are currently going would be sort of synthetic stucco for the majority of this, and try to utilize that to articulate and provide some relief within the building through color and facade treatment. We have recesses at each of the stairwell exits on the northern and southern side of the building, and also have a projecting mass with a higher roof line and a larger roof overhangs and slightly different coloration at the northwest corner here to help draw attention and make it easily navigatable for people entering the site and guests to find their way to the main entrance of the building. Another view similar, just rotated slightly. So this would be looking from Payne Road itself. Similar treatment again, just utilizing the facade materials and the windows and the composition to break up the mass of a building, the hotel. And we got some site plan. This was part of the original site plan application. I think I'll address some of the staff comments, and then if there's any specific questions, I think Maureen can answer relating to stormwater treatment. I think was part of the original preload application as well. So as I mentioned, we had staff comments come in on Friday. I'll just sort of run through where we stand with some of those and how they may or may not have been addressed with the site plan application, or what our approach to those would be. Item 1 was talking about space and bulk. I think we've covered with those. We addressed those in the full site plan, and everything's compliant from our perspective there. Plan development standards, there was a comment about, providing amenities such as benches and bike racks to sort of help strengthen the walkable pedestrian amenities. We're more than happy to do that. Ownership's okay to do that. I'm not sure if it's on the current site plan application, but we're happy to add those. And we should have no issue getting approval from the condominium of 200 South Borough ownership team for the proposed site plan as it stands today. One comment came up regarding Payne Road access. Staff is recommending to eliminate both curb cuts that exist today south of Pizza Plus. We are eliminating the southernmost curb cut. I just want to remind that the northernmost curb cut, we're looking to utilize it as it is in terms of location and width. And just remind you that we hope the board would look favorably on utilizing that, knowing that it's only to be used as emergency access vehicle and not for users of the hotel itself. Part of that access as well was talking about screening of any parking around that cul-de-sac. We're happy to provide that, and we've got a landscaping plan as part of that full site plan application. Another comment was relating to service areas and if there's any dedicated service areas to be proposed, and if there is any screening that's associated with that. We're not proposing any dedicated service areas. This is limited sort of public amenity. There's not food service, so we're not expecting a lot of service deliveries. It would really be in the extent of cleaning and small vending supplies. We have full truck access to the easternmost portion of the site with turning radius that also fire apparatus and larger trucks would have access to. Parking, we were able to clarify the 114 spaces. I can confirm that EV spaces will be installed. The required percentage of installed, ready, and capable will be required as proposed, as needed, and we've got that in the site plan application. There is dead-end parking through the cul-de-sac that was identified. We can confirm that there is adequate space for vehicles to turn around, and that it will be screened from Payne Road to meet the town standards. We are providing 15% minimum landscaping that will be clarified on the site plan application that we went in today. And then in terms of outdoor seating, we currently show an outdoor seating area on the southern portion of the site, adjacent to the southern side of the fitness room, and where there's stairs coming off the elevator lobby and the stairwells to the south of that, the building. We have provided lighting, landscape, and stormwater plans. There was a clarification that there was 6 settlement plates for the preload identified in the geotechnical report. We're happy to amend that, and I think we had shown 5, but we can add 6 there. That's not a problem. We're currently going through the process of getting any necessary South Portland Sanitary District approvals, and we will happy to provide erosion and sedimentation control as requested by the staff. And we, as mentioned earlier, we've begun the process of the amendment to the main DEP site location permit. So that's kind of a quick run through. Hopefully you followed it all. I'm here, Maureen's here available as well, and we can pull up some plans to address any comments or concerns.
Thank you. This is an item that is subject to public comment. Is there anyone in the room who would like to comment? Seeing none from the room, do we have anyone online? We do not. Public comment is closed. I'm going to throw this open to the board without calling on anybody by name. Who would like to go? Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation and seeing this with the previous, the loading application item as well makes it much more clear. So thank you for being very clear on that. The only comment that I have, and one is for you, is that for the LED lighting, whether it's building mounted or if it's pole mounted on the site, that just confirm and make sure that they're specified at a 3,000 3,000 Kelvin color temperature.
Not a problem. Yeah, that's typically what we'll do on building and site lighting, so we'll confirm that that's the
Perfect.
way it was.
Yeah, a lot of times it can be 3,500 or 4,000, but really 3,000 is what we want here. It's more of the warm white,
Agreed. Yeah, we like that too.
closer to the traditional lighting source. Thank you. That's the only question I have for you. The other question I have is presuming no further questions or issues from the board, Madam Chair, are we moving forward with this? Were we voting on this draft motion afterwards?
This is a sketch plan. So there is no vote.
Right. This is related to the preloading portion.
Go ahead.
application. The item 3, the applicant will have 6 months to submit a site plan until May 1st, 2024 to receive building permits before the applicant will be required to return the site to pre-existing conditions. Is this our way of giving them a timeline for when they're allowed to keep that on there so that the preloading is not on for an overly long period of time?
I believe that's correct.
And I'm very satisfied with everything presented tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just piggyback on the 3000K. It's also the dark sky. That's the big thing. You can't get dark sky fixtures if they're greater than 3000K. So you're on board with the 3000. That's excellent. It will require you to have the dimming capabilities so that during, you can schedule it to lower output during less traffic times. In other words, like midnight, you can turn it down a little bit and
no.
save the planet oodles, right?
Not a problem.
I too am satisfied at this level. You kind of had an advantage because we kind of talked you through the sketch planning last time you were here because we were going through the preloading. I'm satisfied the direction you're going with this on the sketch plan. I think having the staff comments here and your responses to most of them seem like you're all on the same page. I'm comfortable with that, and therefore the conditions on the stockpiling phase, I'm comfortable with. What was Roger yelling at me?
Well, Roger has had his hand up, so I'm waiting to call on him when you're done.
Oh, okay. Well, I am done.
All right.
Thank
Rick
you, Madam Chair.
Rick Meinking is done. Roger. Roger, I think you've been unmuted.
I think you can only ask them.
Okay, Roger, Autumn's having trouble unmuting you, so I'm gonna go to, okay, you're up.
I'm actually, I have no problem with anything that's been said so far. I wasn't at the last meeting, so I think my colleagues have covered everything well. So I really don't have much to add, I don't think. So I appreciate your patience. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Anybody else? Comments?
I
Jen?
just have two questions. One, without going into too many of the details, it looks like in general, the idea, the approach to stormwater here is to use some pretty creative green infrastructure treatments, but to generally not tie into or drain to existing stormwater systems with the exception of the lower right. Do I have that right? Lower right drainage area.
Yes and no. Let me try and see if I can do this on Dave's computer. Yeah, let's go with that one. And I apologize for, how quickly this was kind of thrown up there, but we were in the midst of trying to finalize calculations. This particular site was brought before the board with the Sebago, but it was brought before DEP with the Sebago piece as well as a restaurant in the same area that we're currently working in. So when that design was done in 2008, it considered this development. But what it didn't consider is that this development would be proposed 15 years later. And some of those stormwater treatment systems are not actually available anymore. So that BioCell 2 that is just south of the Homewood Suites, that BioCell was oversized and was intended to take a certain volume of water from this particular site. Through our site plan changes here from the original proposal, we're going to be stealing a portion of bioretention cell 2. And therefore, we have reduced the amount of area that can be treated by BioCell 2. So we are reducing the amount of impervious surface that is going to BioCell 2. In doing so, we then had to find other treatment mechanisms for that parking lot. So we're using a focal point treatment. Also, it's a type of BioCell. It's just more, it's like on steroids. The soil filter media can, the water can go through it at about 100 inches per hour versus about 2.5. So it's pretty heavy duty treatment system with a very small footprint. The discharge from that treatment system will still go through the piping and out to the level spreaders as was previously intended for this entire area. We're using also some focal point systems as well as another BioCell and grass under drain swales around the building and around the parking lot, treating the water there and then interconnecting it with the storm water that goes out to those level spreaders instead of using a storm treat system, which I don't even think you can get on eBay. But it is not one that would be even available for us to be able to put that in. So the fortunate thing is that some of the infrastructure is already in place. All of the piping is already in place. And for the most part, on some of the drain manholes, as well as the sewer manhole, we have pipes that were stubs that were installed and capped during the construction of the Sebago Brewing. So we're planning on using that existing infrastructure to be able to bring everything from stormwater down to the level spreaders, and then from sewer, there's a sewer manhole that currently connects out onto Southborough Drive. So that takes care of some of that infrastructure question.
Okay, great. And then did I hear correctly that you included turning template diagrams with your site plan? Is that what you were saying earlier? Today, that went in today?
We didn't include any turning template diagrams.
No, okay.
I know that they were done, but we didn't include any with the site plan application.
Okay, maybe even as just part of a presentation next time, it would be helpful. I'm just curious to see how that works with that.
Yep, that makes an awful lot of sense.
Circle there. That's all I have.
Yeah, I think one of the things to consider with this particular hotel, because it's pretty low key, I guess, and we had the same questions about the trucks. What kind of trucks are you going to be bringing in through here? What kind of deliveries are going to be made? My understanding is that they're going to be your standard box trucks with UPS deliveries, FedEx deliveries, nothing big. So that made me feel a little bit better about how we would be able to manage getting that traffic in through there. That cul-de-sac is actually 31 and a half from the edge of the parking spaces to the center. I keep calling it the Spartan, and that is like an ear. So yeah. So it's 31 and a half feet from the end of the parking spaces to that center island, so that there's a pretty decent aisle in there.
All right, thank you. I'm going to actually probably move faster into the gravel wetland, but the gravel stockpile, excuse me, but I do have a couple of suggestions for you. And one is in terms of the landscaping on the parking lot in between the Spartan and Payne Road. A lot of times what folks have done is put in a berm with grasses on top of it and low bushes and trees. That's something that you can consider, or you can do a typical landscape, but in any case, you need to make as much effort as possible to hide the parking area. That's, as I said, that's one way of taking a look at it. The other thing to talk to you about is how you get into, or how people know how to get into the hotel area from Southborough Drive. And what you are really going to have to do is provide some wayfaring signs in the parking lots. So you're gonna have to talk to the Homewood Suites and Sebago again to make sure that you can put up some signs in there that say X hotel this way.
Great. Yeah, and we've talked with the ownership group. There's an existing monument sign out on Payne Road that has space for one additional sign in there, so we can start out on Payne Road, and obviously they're amenable to us working with them for wayfinding signs off Southborough Drive as well.
Yeah, because once they're in there, the traffic lane right next to Sebago Brewery, I have found from visiting there, is kind of narrow, and cars going both ways provide a problem. So direct folks into your parking lot very carefully. One way past the Sebago and the other way past the Homewood. In other words, into entrance on one drive aisle and exit on the other drive aisle, because you're going, essentially sending them through parking lots. So just make sure that you're really clear for them, for your guests, how they're going to get there. I agree with the staff on the other comments that they may have on there. I think you've responded to the questions that they had in general. Moving into item number 5.02, Opeachy Construction Corporation request site plan, excuse me, that's not it. 4.02. I was right, 5.02, Opeachy Construction Corporation requests site plan review for a temporary gravel stockpile at 200 Southborough Drive. The property is further identified as Assessors Map R37, Lot 48E. Notice how I slid from the sketch plan, which we seem to have finished our discussion of, and into a discussion of the gravel stockpile. The geotechnic report indicated, and I think this is something that's important for you in terms of what you're looking at in terms of starting construction, that without WIC drains, there's an 8-month settlement. With WIC drains, there's a 3 to 4 month settlement. And if you folks want to get into construction in June, you're going to need to put the WIC drains into the gravel.
Yes, and we've started looking at that as well.
Yeah, that could meet your desires in terms of how you manage your construction. I like the design of the building. I look forward to seeing a little more of it. I was intrigued by the windows that you showed in the front. They were a little different. I think from what I saw, they were the mullions were not were asymmetrical.
Correct.
And I thought that really provided an interest in that building that kind of broke up again more of the facade. But you don't have that asymmetrical in the end. I don't believe the facing Payne Road.
No, there's narrow windows there, so it didn't really provide the opportunity to do that. But we are taking a slight look at that right now. We're looking at the room configuration, so there may be an opportunity to do something more like that on the Payne Road end and add some more interest similar to what we're doing on the other
Yeah.
facades.
We really appreciate, and actually the codes call for, the ordinances call for an interest to a building at the street, at the visual. And folks are going to be going through there and really taking a look at the building. So that end unit at the end facing Payne Road really look hard at that and maybe a little beef up on what it's going to look like.
Okay, not a problem. We'll definitely do that.
Okay, I don't have any more comments. Do we have anything else? In that case, I have, just in case you weren't aware, we did agree with your sketch plan with all of the rest of the comments. We don't vote on sketch plans.
That was positive, so we'll take that and run
Yeah,
with that.
you're in good shape. I have a draft motion, Peachy Construction Corporation Site Plan Review. I move to approve the project titled Temporary Gravel Stockpile proposed by Peachy Construction Corporation as depicted on the plan set prepared by Ransom Consulting dated 2/27/23 with the following findings and conditions. Findings. The proposal includes placement of a temporary gravel stockpile at 205 Southborough Drive. The stockpile is in anticipation of a future project that will require further site plan review by the planning board. Conditions. 1, prior to the start of construction, a pre-construction meeting is required. The meeting shall include appropriate town staff, the developer and their site contractor, and is to be coordinated through the planning department. All plan modifications are to be completed prior to scheduling the pre-construction meeting. 2, prior to the pre-construction meeting, the applicant shall A, provide a performance guarantee. The guarantee must include, but is not limited to, the expenses for the removal of the preload material, removal of all existing stockpiled materials, restoration of the site to existing conditions, stabilization of the site, and any necessary erosion control measures. B, based on the geotechnical report to reduce preload time, revise materials, and plan sets to include wick drains. C, address comments in the staff memo dated 3/13/23. 3, a site plan review by the planning board will be required for any proposed construction and use related to the stockpile and preload area. The applicant will have 6 months to submit a site plan and until May 1st, 2024 to receive building permits before the applicant will be required to return the site to pre-existing conditions or upgraded to meet town standards. Failure to comply with this timeline would result in a violation of this approval. Is there a second?
I second it, Madam Chair.
Seconded by Rick Meinking. Seeing no hands waving. Doreen, will you call the roll, please?
Rachel Hendrickson.
Yes.
Rick Meinking.
Yes.
Jennifer Ladd.
Yes.
Jim Hebert
Yes.
and Roger Beelan.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
That has been approved. Your sketch plan is going through and we look forward to seeing you. And you have a very ambitious time frame. Hope you can do it.
All right, thank you very much for working with us and we look forward to seeing you soon. Stay safe tomorrow with the snow.
Yes, as I said, the town hall is closed tomorrow, so. Yeah, well, it's raining when I got here and what it means for me is my 8 a.m. meeting is canceled in the town hall is canceled. Yeah. Item 6.01, minor development reviews. Eric?
Similarly to the last planning board meeting, I think I updated the board that IDEX was going to be submitting for a minor development review of realignment of the rear drive aisle to accommodate a small 12 by 12 nitrogen tank and pad. They are also proposing to reconfigure and eliminate a couple of the planter boxes to accommodate some outdoor seating, as well as show the configuration of the private drive shared with Next Gen Lot 35. That is currently being reviewed. Staff really has no comments on it. We are just awaiting the fire department's approval of the tank size, as we understand that tanks of a certain size could require state fire marshal approval.
Thank you. 602, administrative amendment report.
On the administrative side of things, I think we updated the board last time, but we have now received the formal application. Hannaford, as it goes to fit up the former Shaw's building at 417 Payne Road, is proposing an addition of a clink building in the parking lot towards the rear. We are currently reviewing that at the moment.
Thank you. Correspondence.
None at this time.
Planning board comments.
I have one question.
Sure.
In the Portland Press Herald last week or 2 weeks ago, there was the landfill stopped accepting sludge article. How does that affect us at all? I guess is a question for you, Autumn. Like, what are the implications of that for us, if there are any?
There are implications of that. Our projects have to get approval from the sanitary district if they're going to be utilizing their services. So we are in direct contact with their director of operations. And so we're awaiting some legislative decisions. We'll keep you posted.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, technically, as a planning board, we can continue to hear things, but we can't approve things. So that if it does come down to that, rather than create a queue going back, to 2 years from now, we could hear sketch plans. We could take a look at site review plans. We could not move them forward if there is no access to sewer. But what that would mean is we kind of can start some stuff so that when the sewer problem is settled, excuse the expression there, that people can come back at least partway done with their applications. But said we can't approve anything.
Gotcha. Understood.
And staff is also working, trying to be a little more communicative to the sanitary district. They have asked for our list of projects that we have for ongoing reviews. And then we sent them a brief bulleted list of projects that we've had discussions on with folks who we anticipate will submit, just so that they can kind of get a handle on what might be coming forward. So
And this would be only for projects that are going to be tied to public sewer.
yes. So if it were a single family home out in West Scarborough.
Like a leach field. Yeah.
Yep.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other board questions, comments?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the planning department for registering a few of us for that MMA class. Looking forward to attending that. Thank you.
They may not let us all sit together because we may, cause trouble, but we'll be there.
I still have my spit gun.
Any other comments? Thank you all. I do want to honor Rick DePerry. He and I came on the planning board at the same time. What has been going on is CMP is pulling him out for just about everything. So he has not been able to come to the meetings the way he's wanted to. His letter of resignation indicated that he was hoping he would be able, when his work settles down, that he would be able to serve on this committee again or on another committee and provide community service to the town. So thank you. Do I hear a motion?
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you.